Gradually, the two sacred blood creatures became mad at each other and ignored Hansen. As they were fighting themselves, Hansen took the opportunity to run away. At this point, Hansen was in no rush to run, but observed the two creatures fighting it out. Their fitness levels were definitely both over 100. With their fierce movements, the ice walls and rocks were smashed as they went, with crackling and booming everywhere. The blackbird was entangled with the spider silk everywhere and became slower and slower. The giant snow spider was also pierced in several places by the blackbird, its transparent blood flowing non-stop. Hansen was dazed and quickly ran toward the edge of the cliff. It was foggy down the cliff, so Hansen could not see what was happening there, nor did he know what had happened to the two sacred blood creatures. He waited for a while but did not hear anything fall. There was no screaming either. The fog was not moving. What is happening? Hansen could not decide what to do, looking at the cold fog. The two sacred blood creatures should have all been injured seriously, so there was an opportunity for him. However, Hansen was not sure whether they were alive or dead, nor did he know what was underneath, which was why he did not dare to go down. However, some gods and fortune would be lost if he did not go. That's it. One needs to be daring to survive. These are two sacred blood creatures, so there is no way I should miss this. In addition, I am quite capable myself. Even if there was still a sacred blood creature remaining, I could at least escape even if I could not kill it. Hansen gritted his teeth and summoned the golden rock worm king, flying down the ice cliff on the back of his pet into the cold fog. Hansen stared his eyes wide. Both the snow spider and blackbird were almost dying, but it was not because their previous opponent. Under the huge ice cliff, there was a pond of ice water, from which emerged a monster that looked like a squid with lots of tentacles. Both the snow spider and blackbird were caught by the tentacles, although they were struggling. Because of their previous injuries or the fact that they were weaker than the monster, they were not able to get rid of the tentacles. Instead, the tentacles were getting tighter and tighter. Very soon, the creatures were about to be killed. Fortunately, the monster did not seem to have any other means to attack other than tightening its tentacles. It could not strangle the two sacred blood creatures immediately. However, it was still just a matter of time. Hansen was dumbstruck by the fact that there were three sacred blood creatures, each scarier than the last. It seemed that this area of ice and snow was far more dangerous than Hansen had thought. Initially, Hansen thought if he could take down the aristocrat spirit shelter, he could do whatever he wanted to this area. However, it seemed that he had been too naive. Hansen stared at the blackbird and the giant snow spider that were about to be strangled to death. If he gave them a blow at the right moment, he might be able to get himself a sacred blood beast soul. However, before Hansen found the perfect opportunity, there was a beast roar from the other end of the ice valley followed by a loud hoofbeat. Is there another sacred blood creature? Hansen was shocked. Very soon, Hansen found he made a mistake. There were no sacred blood creatures, but arrays of ice-armored beasts running his way like trained soldiers. There were at least 300 to 400 of them. The ice-armored beasts threw themselves at the monster with tentacles, biting the tentacles. The monster swept its tentacles across and got rid of a few ice-armored beasts, but more came up to attack it. After the ice-armored beasts, Hansen saw giant polar bears, unicorn wolves, and wendigos. Each creature looked very strong and fierce. At the end of the force was a red-striped white tiger on the back of which sat an elegant woman in glamorous priest robe. The woman had purple eyes and hair, holding a short staff that seemed to be made of crystal. Her eyes fixed on the monster, blackbird, and snow spider. The priest lady pointed her staff at the monster. The polar bears, wolves, and wendigos roared loudly and threw themselves at the monster. By nature, creatures of lower levels had fear toward creatures of higher level than them, so they would not dare to fight a more advanced creature. However, those polar bears, ice-armored beasts, and wendigos that seemed like mutant creatures had no fear toward the sacred blood monster of tentacles. Under the command of the priest lady, they took death calmly and fought the monster together. Spirit. Hansen was hiding behind an ice wall, watching the priest lady in surprise. The spirit had almost transparent skin. Her eyes were like cats and her ears were pointy. There was no way she would be mistaken for human. Hansen only knew there was an aristocrat spirit in the spirit shelter on the mountain, which should be her. The creatures also looked similar to what Hansen had heard. However, Hansen had no idea what she wanted to do. Judging by the number of the creatures, she should have used all the force of her shelter. Although there were a lot of creatures on her side, they were not the monster's match. The ice-armored beasts could not even break the skin of the monster. The attacks from the mutant creatures only left some shadow marks on the tentacles, which did not seem too effective. To the contrary, once the monster swept its tentacles across, a few ice-armored beasts would be blown away and injured seriously if they were not killed already. As Hansen was wondering why the aristocrat spirit did this, she suddenly raised her crystal staff. The crystal staff issued ripples which gradually wrapped her body. Momentarily, all of the runes on her robe were brought to life and started to glow, surrounding her with light. As the light gradually became dim, Hansen saw what she looked like and stared his eyes wide. The crystal staff had now turned into a crystal spear with red stripes. The aristocrat spirit held the spear backward on the side of her body, her eyes fixed on the monster of tentacles. Kill! The aristocrat spirit shouted coldly. Her mount, the red-striped white tiger, quickly ran toward the monster of tentacles and reached it immediately. Holding onto the two sacred blood creatures and under the siege of so many mutant creatures, the monster of tentacles could not focus, although it was not injured. It failed to see that the red-striped white tiger had already come at its head. Riding on the tiger in the air, the aristocrat's spirit gazed at the monster's head coldly. The moment when the tiger brushed by the monster, the spear in the spirit's hand eventually moved. Like a cold lightning bolt, the crystal spear was stabbed into a squinted eye of the monster. With a growl, the monster suddenly waved a dozen huge tentacles madly, whipping the two sacred blood creatures and the mutant creatures away. However, the aristocrat's spirit stayed still. Her tiger leveraged on the monster and charged the monster again. The other eye of the monster was stabbed as well, so it issued another painful scream. This time, instead of using its tentacles, it quickly shrank into the ice water pond, carrying the aristocrat's spirit with it. Making a huge splash, Hansen was dumbfounded. The aristocrat's spirit was even stronger than he thought. She should have a fitness level around 80, which made her a top aristocrat spirit. More importantly, the aristocrat spirit was extremely skilled at martial arts. When she was fighting, she had top-notch footwork and spear skills comparable to any human evolver. Shortly, the pond became calm. With another splash, the aristocrat spirit emerged from the cold pond, dripping all over. Her purple hair was soaked, stuck to the crystal armor, making her look attractive in a different way. Hansen saw very clearly that the aristocrat spirit had only hurt the weakness of the monster, which is its eyes. The monster was only forced back into the pond. She did not have the ability to kill it. The snow spider and the blackbird, which were severely injured, tried to escape in the chaos. However, the creatures from the spirit shelter threw themselves at the two sacred blood creatures, preventing them from leaving. If it were under any other circumstances, either the snow spider or the blackbird could easily fight or even kill these creatures. However, they had just been severely injured and almost killed by the monster, which made it hard for them to even breach the siege of the creatures. The aristocrat spirit did not pause at all, attacking the snow spider with the spear in her hands. Hansen suddenly understood that the aristocrat spirit had the same plan as he did. She wanted to get rid of the monster in order to pick up some easy gains. Go ahead. I wonder who the real winner would be. Hansen watched the fight from behind the ice wall and chuckled inwardly. Although both the snow spider and blackbird were dying, they were, after all, sacred blood creatures. But for primitive and mutant creatures, the aristocrat's spirit still suffered a great loss trying to kill them. Bodies of ice-armored beasts were lying everywhere. More than half of the ice-armored beasts had been injured or died. Several mutant creatures were also killed and injured. The aristocrat's spirit did not change her expression, as if she did not care about the death of the creatures at all. She was focused on looking for the weaknesses of the two sacred blood creatures. It seemed that she wanted to enslave the two sacred blood creatures, which was why she did not want to kill them. The snow spider suddenly made a weird sound at the aristocrat's spirit, taking back all 8 spider legs, and lay on its stomach. Seeing the behavior of the snow spider, the aristocrat's spirit immediately brandished her spear to signal the creatures to stop their attacks on the snow spider and turn to the blackbird instead. The aristocrat's spirit walked up to the snow spider and held the spear horizontally. With ripples passing her body, her armor turned into the priest rope again, and the red stripes disappeared from the crystal spear, which then turned to a staff. She held the sparkling crystal staff high and touched the head of the snow spider with the gemstone sitting on top of the staff. The snow spider shivered, wanting to get away from the sparkling staff, but in the end, it only squeaked softly and accepted. Seeing her staff was about to touch the head of the spider, the female spirit could not help smiling. However, at this very moment, she quickly changed her expression. Moving quickly to the right, she was already too late. A figure suddenly flashed past the aristocrat spirit, holding a dagger that looked like a wolf tooth backward and slashing in at her neck. The aristocrat spirit stepped back, her staff falling to the ground. She covered her snow-white neck with both hands, staring at the grinning man with the dagger in his hand. Blood was welling between her fingers. "Thank you so much for your help. I will never forget you. I will go to your place another time to thank you by asking for your service," Hansen said to the female spirit with a smile. Without any pause, he jumped to the kneeling snow spider and stabbed his dagger into its face. Squeak! The snow spider squeaked painfully, trying to stand up, but it was too late. Hansen moved the dagger to slice the spider's head open, and blood and brains squirted from the injury. The snow spider fell to the ground. Sacred blood creature snow spider killed. No beast soul gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points. Hansen lamented the fact that he did not gain a beast soul when hearing the voice. Seeing that Hansen killed the sacred blood snow spider, the aristocrat spirit bristled and tried to say something. However, when she opened her mouth, blood jetted out, and she turned into scattering sparkles with no words left. "Rest in peace," Hansen said quietly, running toward the other sacred blood creature, the black bird. The creatures that followed the aristocrat's spirit scattered and ran away after she was killed. Hansen did not have time to pay them any mind. Both primitive and mutant creatures were always abundant, which he had plenty of opportunities to kill. However, it was very hard to find a sacred blood creature, so he could not let this chance go. The blackbird was no stronger than the snow spider. It did not cost Hansen any efforts to behead it. Young sacred blood creature evil-blooded condor killed. Beast soul of evil-blooded condor gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred blood geno points. Hearing the voice in his mind, Hansen was so thrilled that he almost jumped. A sacred blood creature beast soul. That was his first sacred blood beast soul in second God's sanctuary. A sacred blood beast soul in second God's sanctuary was much stronger than a super beast soul from first God's sanctuary. Without the ability to kill super creatures in second God's sanctuary yet, this was already the best beast soul Hansen could get his hands on at this point. The other creatures had all run away, and Hansen was in no mood to chase after them. He could not wait to see what type of beast soul his newly gained one was. Hansen was looking forward to having a shape-shifting beast soul the most, or a beast soul armor would do as well. The former could enhance his ability to fight to a great extent, while the latter could increase his survival rates significantly. Type of beast soul of evil-blooded condor, glyph. Seeing the introduction to the newly gained beast soul, Hansen was dazed. What kind of beast soul is a beast soul glyph? Because there were too many types of beast souls, all they learned in school was some common types. As human became stronger and stronger in God's sanctuary, more creatures had been killed and more types of beast souls were known. There were many newly discovered beast souls that one had to explore oneself. Of course, if one reported the discovery of a new type of beast soul to the Alliance, some rewards could be claimed after the type was verified. Hansen looked at his body carefully and saw that he had a new tattoo of black condor, which was spreading its wings and ready to attack. The condor looked so fierce and gloomy that he almost felt like it was real and would claw out someone's heart at any minute. The tattoo stretched from the back of Hansen to his chest, taking up the better half of his upper body, making him look like a badass fighter. Hansen tried to make a punch but did not feel any enhancement in his strength, nor did he feel anything odd about his body. The glyph did not have any burden on his body like shape-shifting beast souls either. What is this glyph for? Hansen frowned slightly, unable to figure it out at the moment. He had to look something up when he was back on the warship Daphne, checking the bodies of the snow spider and evil-blooded condor. Hansen was ready to summon the golden growler and take the meat back, in case the monster with tentacles came back. However, he suddenly heard a crackling sound in his mind, as if something was broken. Hansen was dazed and suddenly remembered something. He looked to his mind and saw the cocoon of light that the holy angel turned into had been broken. The cute Lolita walked out with the black crystal in her hand, looking exactly the same, without any change. That was fast. Hansen was quite surprised, wanting to check on the holy angel. However, she suddenly left the black crystal and flew out of Hansen's mind on her own, throwing herself at the body of the snow spider. "Hey, what are you trying to do?" Hansen quickly stopped her. The holy angel held onto the leg of the snow spider, pleading with her eyes full of tears. Although she could not speak, her vulnerable look made Hansen soften his attitude. "All right, you go ahead." Hansen thought that the snow spider was so big in size that it would take him several days to gain a sacred geno point, so it was much easier for her to eat it. After all, it was just a sacred blood creature instead of a super creature. You will have plenty of such opportunities in the future. In addition, there was also the body of the evil-blooded condor, which would take him at least 2 or 3 months to eat as well. The Lolita gained Hansen's permission and became so excited that she immediately opened her mouth and bit at the leg of the snow spider. Hansen was in no mood to watch her eating and quickly checked her current status. Super Beast Soul Archangel, Pet. Seeing such a simple introduction, Hansen felt completely dumbstruck. Archangel sounded a lot more impressive than Holy Angel, and there was no problem with the Super Beast Soul status. Or Pet, where the note can further evolve. Maybe she had turned into a Super Beast Soul of Second God's Sanctuary. Thinking of that possibility, Hansen's heart started to race. If that was true, it was to say that he already owned a Super Beast Soul of Second God's Sanctuary. As long as he made her transform, he would have the ability to kill a super creature in Second God's Sanctuary. Hansen turned to look at the Lolita and found her already eating the meat of the condor. The gigantic evil-blooded condor was devoured almost completely, with only a leg left. The snow spider was long gone. "Stop it," Hansen quickly exclaimed. He was only lost in his thought for a little while, yet the Lolita had already almost finished 2 sacred blood creatures. How efficient. The little girl stood next to Hansen looking upset and dissatisfied, her eyes glancing at the bird leg from time to time, licking her pink lips. "You foodie, this bird leg is mine and you don't get to take another bite." Hansen squeezed her tender cheeks and sent her back to his mind. At the same time, he summoned the golden growler in its biggest form, putting the bodies of the ice-armored beasts and other mutant creatures on its back. In the ice cave, the berserk ice-armored beast that young Manly took back made quite a splash among the old-timers. An evolver who had just entered Second God's Sanctuary was able to kill a berserk ice-armored beast, which was simply unbelievable. Some people were saying how impressive the young people nowadays were, while others thought it was just good luck. Young Manly did not explain anything. Even if she said that Hansen killed the berserk beast with 1 punch, these people would not believe it. Actually, no one would believe a fresh evolver could kill a berserk ice-armored beast with just 1 punch. Even a sacred evolver could not achieve that. As people were still talking about Hansen and the berserk ice-armored beast, they heard loud noises that sounded like an earthquake. Did the creatures find this place and come here to attack us? Many people were shocked, going close to the teleport device, ready to leave God's sanctuary in case of any danger. After a while, the rumbles stopped. They heard a voice shouting, "Manly, give me a hand." Young Manly clearly could tell that it was Hansen's voice. She quickly walked outside the ice cave. Others were also wondering what was happening, so some of them also followed out. When they came out of the ice cave, all of them stared their eyes wide. They could not believe what they were seeing and their jaws almost dropped to the floor. A golden lion that looked like a small hill was carrying piles of bodies of ice-armored beasts and other mutant creatures such as giant snow wolf and ice bear. On top of the bodies stood a young figure. It was Hansen, who disregarded people's advice and went hunting alone. "Hansen, brother, these are all yours," Zhu asked with his voice trembling. This was so hard to believe that he could not register the fact even though he had rubbed his eyes hard. Everyone else had almost the same reaction. Many of them had been here for more than a decade, but none of them had witnessed so many games. In addition, there were even bodies of mutant creatures. Many of them felt unreal like Zuyu, feeling they were in a dream. Hansen told them about how he encountered the sacred blood snow spider, evil-blooded condor, monster of tentacles, and aristocrat spirit. However, he was telling them the adapted version, in which he only witnessed a fight between the 4 and grabbed some gains when they were all seriously injured. "Look, this is the bird leg of that blackbird bitten off by another creature. Unfortunately, it still ran away, so I only have this leg." Hansen raised the bird leg that was the leftover of the Archangel, as if he was showing off. Everyone looked to Hansen admiringly, saying that Hansen was so lucky that he collected so many bodies of ice-armored beasts and mutant creatures and even a sacred blood bird leg. Lady Luck was really looking after him. No one suspected what Hansen said. Some people had been here for decades, and many of them had seen the snow spider and the blackbird. Some people had even seen the aristocrat spirit. For someone who just came here to know these details, Hansen must have seen them with his own eyes. Otherwise, how could he possibly know? "Brother, such luck." Ziyu looked at the piles of bodies lustfully. "What do you plan to do with these? You can't eat all of them, make yourself. How about you sell some of them to us, and we can give you a good price?" As Zuyu said it, everyone's eyes were focused on Hansen. "I am going to sell these creatures, but only to the insiders. If anyone else wanted to buy them, they have to double the price. Also, I only accept St. Hall licenses and Geno solutions beyond a class," said Hansen quietly. He did not bring all the meat back just to gain some money. "Brother, what do you mean?" Everyone was dazed, and Zuyu asked eventually. "I am going to set up a gang. Whoever in the gang could purchase meat with the insider price, and they can also use their points, Hansen said casually. In the future, he would definitely conquer the spirit shelter. It would take more than just himself to rule the spirit shelter, because he could not stay there all the time. He would rather recruit every master fighter at this place to follow him and guard the spirit shelter for him. This way, in the future, no matter how many people were teleported to this place, they had to follow his order. What? On a Class St. Hall license of the Evolver level for an ice-armored beast. Why don't you go rob someone instead? The man shouted madly immediately. Many people also accused Hansen of being shameless. Some even tried to snatch a body on the back of the golden growler. This was just human nature. Many people could go through hardship with you together, but could not share your wealth, let alone watch you become fortunate. Ouch. Hansen made a sudden move, and the cursed wolf dagger suddenly cut off the hand of someone who had touched the golden growler to snatch a body. The shrill scream made everyone feel dumbstruck. They all stopped moving and looked to Hansen, and the man with the broken arm was rolling around on the floor. Without my permission, I dare you touch my properties. If your hands touched it, you would lose your hands. If your feet moved, you would lose your feet. If your head came close, you would lose your head, Hansen said coldly with the blood the cursed wolf dagger. Damn it. He got some nerve to use violence. Let us kill the bastard. You injured our friend. Are you even a human being? Kill this animal, son of a bitch. Hansen suddenly became the person whom everyone hated, as if he was so guilty that everyone would kill him the first chance they got. Zuyu and a few others tried to stop the rest of the group. Because they were so few, 4 or 5 persons had already thrown themselves at Hansen, who were all old-timers who had been in this place for more than 2 decades. Of course, they were not trying to avenge the person who had lost his hand, but to take all the bodies for themselves after getting rid of Hansen. In their eyes, Hansen was no more than a brat who got lucky. Since he had just entered Second God's Sanctuary, there was no way that he was their match. It would be a piece of cake to kill Hansen. Those people summoned their beast souls and tried to kill him with each move, ready to take Hansen's life. These bodies were so attractive, especially to those who had not seen so much mutant meat in decades. On top of that, there was even a sacred blood bird leg. Lust had gone to their heads. Hansen did not change his expression at all, smiling coldly. He had thought of this possibility when he brought back the meat and did not feel surprised at all. It was not even necessary to get angry. Young Manly's face became stern. She summoned a bow and arrow, ready to help Hansen. These people were the ones she despised the most. Because most people could potentially gain some benefits, they became self-righteous in grabbing what belonged to others. These people were nothing different from robbers, and even worse than robbers. At least robbers got the bad name that they deserve, while these people tried to justify their behaviors. However, before young Manly could even shoot an arrow, Hansen suddenly moved. Instantaneously, he dashed between the first 5 people who made their attacks. Ouch. 5 screams were made at the same time, so they sounded like it came from the same person. The first 5 people who threw themselves at Hansen all lost their right hands, which were holding their weapons. Blood jetted out, and the 5 persons were rolling around on the ground with their left hands covering their broken arms, pleading and crying. Everyone was dumbstruck by Hansen, who had a straight face, and the 5 screaming persons, shocked at what had happened. Those 5 people had been in Second God's Sanctuary for more than a decade. They were all quite experienced. Although it was hard to get some meat in this place, their fitness level must be over 40 after so many years. However, after one move, all of them lost their right hands, which made everyone shocked. Uncle King is here. Uncle King, you must help us. This bastard hurt his own kind. Uncle King, we have always helped each other, and he is cruel even to one of us. He's just an animal. For an evolver who had a lifespan of 300 years old, 80 years old was indeed just middle-aged. Seeing the man called Uncle King, young Manly became nervous, put down her bow and arrow and said hastily, "Uncle King, don't listen to them. They were trying to steal Hansen's." Before young Manly even finished her words, Uncle King gestured her to stop. Seeing Uncle King's behavior, the rest of the group became excited and blamed Hansen for everything with exaggeration, as if it was a felony for Hansen not to share his gains with them for free. Their behavior of stealing was also beautified as a move for justice. Young Manly looked upset. Uncle King should be the first person who was teleported to this place. He had been here for a few decades and had the most geno points among the group. He was also the only person who had killed a mutant creature. According to Uncle King himself, his fitness level was around 60. But young Manly believed it should be more than that. In addition, Uncle King had also practiced strong hyper-geno arts designed for evolvers, so he was not any average evolver. Uncle King, this is not all Hansen's fault. Zuyu gritted his teeth and said in Hansen's favor, However, Uncle King gestured him to silence as well and walked to Hansen. Young Manly's face became even more grim. She quickly walked to Hansen, showing her attitude. The rest of the group were celebrating Hansen's mishap with expectation and greed. As long as Uncle King got rid of Hansen, they should be able to split the meat. Uncle King had always been generous, so they should all be able to get some. Seeing Uncle King walking straight to Hansen, many people were shouting inwardly, "Kill him! Kill him!" Although Hansen had some extraordinary performance and an impressive dagger, no one believed he could beat Uncle King, who was absolutely stronger than him. When Uncle King was less than 6 feet from Hansen, under everyone's watch and expectation, he drew a steel knife that looked ancient. With the surprising, suspicious, puzzled, confused, uneasy, and frightened looks from different people, Uncle King wielded the weapon and cut off the heads of the 5 people who were rolling around and screaming. Then, Uncle King bowed to Hansen reverently. "Young Master Han, Ning King has come too late. I deserve any punishment from you." Everyone was shocked at the moment. Uncle King was the strongest person in the group, the only one who had killed a mutant creature, acted as if he was Hansen's servant. Everyone felt they needed more brain power to understand that. The names of the Starry Group. Hansen frowned slightly. That was the only names he knew of. Uncle King said respectively, "Yes, I am the eldest among the 6 sons of the names, also the most useless one. My 2 nephews did not know who you were and had acted inappropriately. My father wanted to apologize in person but was afraid that you did not like to be disturbed, so he did not go. However, he told us that no matter which one of us in the family had the luck to meet you, we must treat you as our patron. Whatever you need, we would support you no matter how much it costs." As Uncle King said that, the rest of the group were completely shocked. Everyone had heard about Starry Group, which was one of the largest corporations in the Alliance. No one had thought that Uncle King was one of the Nings. What was even more unexpected was that even the Nings had to treat Hansen this way. Everyone was wondering what was Hansen's background. Many people got scared and became pale at this point. They wanted to rob someone whom even the Nings needed to be reverent to. If Hansen wanted to get his revenge, it would be so easy not only in God's sanctuary, but also in the Alliance. Everyone was covered in cold sweat and felt their legs were limp. "You did not know that before, so it was okay. We will talk about the future later," Hansen commented neutrally. He knew that the reason for Uncle King to treat himself like that was not because of who he was, but the potential relationship between him and Han Jingjai. Hansen could not tell whether Uncle King meant what he said, so he did not feel happy at all. "In the future, whatever young Master Han needs, please let us know. The names will not disappoint you." Hansen nodded and turned to Young Manly. "Young Manly, I will give this much meat to you. Organize our gang as soon as possible, but it will not be necessary to recruit some of these people." Hansen had no doubt in Young Manly's ability. She used to manage a big gang like Steel Armor Gang really well. There were not a lot of people present, so even if they all joined the gang, it would be still a piece of cake for Young Manly. Okay, Young Manly counted all the bodies and felt puzzled. Since the names treated him like this, maybe he was really related to Han Jingjai. However, thinking about it, Young Manly felt it was unlikely. Everyone knew that Han Jingjai did not have a wife or kids. Hansen did not mind what Young Manly was thinking. After giving everything to her, he teleported back to the Alliance, wanting to figure out what was the use of a beast soul glyph as soon as possible. "Hansen, when did you come back?" Qiu Cheng said hi to Hansen while heading out the moment Hansen went back to the dormitory. "I've just come back. Where are you heading?" Hansen asked casually. "Where else than the drill? It is the end of the month and at this time there is always a drill going on for everyone to join. Whoever gets the first place will be rewarded by Vice Captain Chen. I'm just going to check it out. Your timing is perfect. Let's go together." Qiu Cheng dragged Hansen out. Initially, Hansen did not want to go. However, since everyone was getting along pretty well in the cookhouse, he did not want to turn Qiu Cheng down and followed him to the training hall of the warship. Hansen and Qiu Cheng came to the training hall, which was almost full of soldiers already. It seemed that many people were interested in the drill. Since everyone in the cookhouse was present, Qiu Cheng and Hansen sat next to them. Hansen took a look at the training hall and found the training field was a closed one. Also, he found the training item familiar. "Isn't this the device called Sprint that Professor Yan designed?" Hansen saw the metal walls on the training field and felt surprised that the device was put into use so soon. A soldier was quickly jumping and running on the metal walls, but he did not even make it halfway before he got shocked and fell, rolling out of the device. "Who else wants to give it a try? If you can pass this test at level 10, I will reward you with an S-Class St. Hall license of the Evolver level," Chen Shaoxin said with a smile, sitting at the rostrum of the training hall. The reward was a lot, but none of the soldiers moved, looking at each other. Sprint at level X with a gravity of 40 added was simply too difficult. Many soldiers had already tried, and many among them were great evolvers. However, none of them was able to make it to even half the way. Warframe Department, Warship Crew, Coast Guard, and Medical Team had all sent someone to try. Now only the Cookhouse has not tried yet. I think we should give them a chance, someone suddenly said. Hansen thought the voice was familiar, looked to that direction, and found he was Wang Hu, the head of the Warframe Department who he met last time. The fat squad leader became slightly pale. There had been many great soldiers who had tried the device and failed, so Wang Hu was clearly bringing the Cookhouse up to set them up. However, there was no way the fat squad leader could argue with that. After hearing Wang Hu's words, Chen Shaoxin looked at the fat squad leader and said with a smile, "That is right. Liu, you are having a lot of fun just now, so it's time for you to move around. I think you have a great team, so you will definitely do well." "Yes, Captain." The fat squad leader stood up and saluted, cursing Wang Hu inwardly. Although everyone in the cookhouse was an evolver with high ranks, they were not the best fighters, because that's not what they did. They were only there to see other people train but did not expect to be set up by Wang Hu. Although the fat squad leader wanted to go himself, the rule regulated that no team lead shall participate. In addition, with his round figure, he would probably lose even worse if he were to participate. "Fatty, isn't there a new recruit in your cookhouse? Let him make an appearance. It doesn't matter what the result is. We just want to meet him." As the fat squad leader was hesitating whom to pick, Wang Hu spoke again. The fat squad leader frowned and wanted to say something. However, Hansen said calmly, "It's okay. I can try. I want to anyway." Hansen got up, shot a glance at Wang Hu, and entered the training field. Hansen entered the training field, and the gravity trainer was turned up. He suddenly felt a lot more burden. Everyone's eyes were suddenly on Hansen. Hansen had asked Jai Yanran about Wang Hu in private, because as sensitive as he was, he could feel the hostility Wang Hu held against himself. That was abnormal. Hansen was merely a new recruit and had not offended Wang Hu ever. He had not even met Wang Hu before. Hansen did not feel that the hostility simply came from the bump. What Jai Yanran told Hansen corroborated Hansen's assumption. Wang Hu was connected to the expert panel. Although he was the head of the Warframe Department, he was elected because of the suggestion of the expert panel. Wang Hu himself had selected all the soldiers in his department. It was fair to say that the Warframe Department worked for the expert panel. There were many scholars and experts pissed at Jai Yanran, which was a known fact. After all, Jai Yanran had just become an evolver. Although she came from a prominent family, that did not help the fieldwork, which was why the expert panel did not like her very much. In addition, the old captain whom Jai Yanran had replaced was very close to the expert panel, so that had also added to the prejudice the expert panel held against Jai Yanran. Because of Jai Yanran's family, no one dared to say anything. However, if Jai Yanran herself made some serious mistakes, it would be natural for her to be removed from Daphne. If he acted poorly, Jai Yanran would be humiliated. It was not an option for his girlfriend to be humiliated. Not just that, he needed to make her proud. Otherwise, he would not call himself her boyfriend. Hansen knew very well what Wang Hu was trying to do, but he did not care. "You want to watch? I'll let you watch." Hansen made the first step on the metal wall, dashing on the white zone which was only 1 foot wide. Hansen was very fast, unlike the previous soldiers who were trying to control their speed so that they had more time to observe and decide how to go ahead. Hansen did the opposite thing. He was fast from the beginning, going forward on the randomly laid metal walls. A newbie is just a newbie. Going like this, he would fall in seconds. Many people were thinking in their head, watching Hansen going as fast as this, Wang Hu could not help but feel surprised, wondering if Hansen was a true idiot or trying to fall as fast as possible. Even Chen Shaoxin frowned slightly. If this was all he could do, it would be a waste of Jai Yanran's energy. Chen Shaoxin was quite disappointed. Just a dozen seconds later, almost every soldier widened their eyes. Hansen was jumping up and down on the carefully placed metal walls, fast and steady. He managed to fulfill many actions that looked extremely scary flawlessly with a sense of rhythm. As he stepped on the leading or reversed metal walls, he was so smooth that people almost forgot that it was sprint at level 10. When the difficulty and speed reached a certain level, it was credible to watch someone go like this. Going through one challenge after another at such high speed made people's blood boil. Everyone wished they were in the moment with Hansen. "Very well done, Hansen." The fat squad leader was so happy that he could not close his mouth. Hansen had not made a single mistake from the beginning to the end. He was simply acting like the tutorial the AI simulated. This new recruit is great. Being someone close to the JIS, Chen Shaoxin was happy to see Hansen's performance and smiled. Quartermaster Zhao Ping also nodded and said, "Great indeed." Director Lin Haifeng said, "What a great newbie. It is such a shame that he was sent to the cookhouse." Momentarily, Hansen had already gone through half of sprint without even lowering his speed. He kept running forward as if he could not stop himself. All the soldiers had become extremely excited. With the fat squad leader leading them, they started to clapping to cheer him up. As they were clapping, Hansen's moves felt even more arithmetic. Each of the step was on the beat, which was great to watch. When Hansen finished sprint on the last metal wall, the clapping became applause. Many soldiers even stood up. "Very nicely done. You deserve the reward. Here is the S-Class St. Hall license." Chen Shaoxin walked to Hansen and gave him the license. "Thank you, Captain." Hansen took the license and saluted. "No need. You deserve it." Chen Shaoxin patted Hansen on the shoulder and smiled. "You have very nice moves. Have you practiced this before, sir?" The system called Sprint is one of the products developed by Professor Yan from Blackhawk Military Academy. I am his student and one of the testers of the system, Hansen said truthfully. "That is why. So you came from a famous teacher. Then tell us about the system," Chen Shaoxin said with approval. Chen Shaoxin himself was the student of a famous professor, so he liked someone with Hansen's background. Hansen introduced this system Sprint to the soldiers as he was told to. He was someone who had used the system since it was developed, so he knew every detail about the system. After his introduction, the soldiers had a more profound understanding about the system and was less fearful of the challenge. Wang Hu gazed at Hansen, who was content among the crowds, with a cold look, curled his lips and said contentedly, "Dumbass, show off as much as you could. The more you show, the faster you will die." Wang thought he had seen through Hansen's strength, so he felt quite content. In the eyes of Wang Hu, who had passed 80 in his fitness, Hansen, whose fitness should be only around 40 or 50, was nothing. This S-Class St. Hall license was different from an ordinary license in that he was able to use it on Daphne to trade for the hyper-geno arts and geno solutions stored on the warship. Hansen did not hesitate and chose hyper-geno art. When he was picking, he had a slight trouble, because Daphne was not the St. Hall. Only 3 to 4 types of S-Class hyper-geno arts were stored on board, so Hansen had not too many options. Microcrystal, it was a hyper-geno art that could change the entire body. It could turn human body cells into microcrystal. When practiced well, the user's entire body would be turned into crystal. No weapon could injure the user, not even laser guns. In fact, most modern weapons would be useless in front of someone who practiced microcrystal. Of course, was very difficult to practice microcrystal. Without 3 to 5 years, one could not even get started with the hyper-geno art. Normally speaking, it took 1 to 2 decades to achieve anything. The reason that Daphne was carrying microcrystal and many crew members were practicing it was that microcrystal also gave its users some resistance against the destructive weapons in crystallizer rulings. That was why it was specially selected to be placed on Daphne. Many people who had been studying crystallizer ruins would practice microcrystal. However, because it took too long to practice it, only a few people had made some achievements with the hyper-geno art. Although there were not a lot of people who could go far with microcrystal, many experts and scholars in the expert panel were better at microcrystal, since they had practiced 2 or 3 decades or even longer. From a practical perspective, Jade Fist was definitely the obvious choice, because it could be put into use in 1 to 2 months. However, after some thoughts, Hansen used his license on microcrystal. The exploitation of a single crystallizer ruins often took years or even decades. Hansen did not know if he would spend his entire service excavating crystallizer ruins, so it would not hurt to practice microcrystal. After Hansen chose microcrystal, Wang Hu got the news very soon. But he only snorted contentedly. What's the use of microcrystal at this point? He will not get anywhere in 3 to 5 years. There is no way he could use it. Wang Hu felt Hansen's choice was too stupid. People who made choice like this were often perfectionists or obsessive. Although the future seemed to be bright, the practical value was so little that it was basically useless. Microcrystal was far less useful than Jade Fist. Hansen had no idea of what Wang Hu was thinking. After he got his hands on the microcrystal, he started to study it and saw the tutorial for 3 times. After having a brief idea about what it was, Hansen drank a bottle of Geno solutions designed for microcrystal and started to practice it. Feeling his body cells motivated under the effect of microcrystal, Hansen felt quite surprised. It was clearly stated in the tutorial that if he could feel something in the beginning, it meant the hyper-geno art was fit for him. However, even so, without 1 to 2 years, he would not see any effects. It was a hyper-geno art that took a long time to practice. If the progress was too great, the body would not be able to undertake the sudden change of the body cells, which would lead his health to collapse. Hansen watched every single detail according to the tutorial and ran the hyper-geno art through his body entirely. When he was ready to do it for the second time, something suddenly happened. Jadeskin that Hansen had always been practicing suddenly became active at this point and joined microcrystal. More precisely, it swallowed microcrystal, making microcrystal a part of the coolness it was creating. When Hansen started to practice Jadeskin, he was too old in age, since the foundation was not laid when he was a boy, and he had practiced the hyper-geno art for a short time. Hansen was not able to make a big progress with it. Without the help of Geno solutions, until this day, he still was not able to make the first breakthrough with Jadeskin. Hansen was stuck in a bottleneck and failed to make the breakthrough. However, when he drank the Geno solutions to practice microcrystal, Jadeskin was activated unexpectedly and was pushed to the first breakthrough. Hansen only had one feeling at this point: cold, piercing and thrilling cold. The cold did not come from the outside but seemed to come from within. It was as if every single inch of his body was giving off the coldness, making Hansen feel like he was going to turn into an ice statue. He wanted to stop activation of Jadeskin, otherwise wondered if he would be frozen to death. However, Jadeskin was like a wild horse that did not follow his control at all. The cold got worse and worse, making Hansen become unconscious. "I can't sleep. If I fall asleep, I'm afraid I will not wake up ever." Hansen knew very well what would happen to someone who fell asleep in the snow, so he was striving to be lucid. However, it did not help a lot. At this point, he could not even move his fingers. Damn it, how come the thermostat is broken at this point? Is God trying to kill me? Hansen wanted to smash the damn machine, but unfortunately, he could not even move. Suddenly, an idea crossed Hansen's mind, which made him widen his eyes. No way, there is no such a coincidence. The reason the thermostats did not change only meant the room temperature did not actually drop. The cold I am feeling is very likely just a hallucination rather than a reality. Thinking of that, Hansen quickly gritted his teeth and told himself, "I'm not cold. I'm not cold. Everything is fake. It's just my hallucination. Damn it, it's really cold." Hansen felt like the psychological suggestion did not really work, because he was actually frozen to death. It felt like his heart was frozen and blood had stopped flowing and became ice. The coldness went to his heart. Gradually, the cold left him, and Hansen started to feel warm. It was like sunshine in winter, making his trembling body feel better. Although it was not hot, it made him feel so comfortable that he almost moaned. However, Hansen did not feel happy about it. He became even more worried. He knew that the cold did not go away. The warmth meant he was not far from death. As soon he was fooled by the heat and fell asleep, he would never wake up. When he was discovered by others, he would be a dead body. He tried his best not to fall asleep, but he felt more and more fuzzy. In the end, he could not help but fall asleep. Hansen did not know how long he had been sleeping. When he woke up again, he felt so comfortable as if he had just stepped out of a hot spring. "What? I did not die." Hansen raised his hands incredulously and pinched his cheeks. Feeling the pain, he yelped. Hansen felt his body was somewhat different. Although he could not tell what was different, the feeling could not be mistaken. Hansen could not wait to run Jadeskin in his body, trying to figure out what had happened. The moment he started, he saw his two hands had become transparent like ice or jade. These hands reminded Hansen of Zulongin's hands the only time he met Zulongin. However, Hansen's hands were even more fine than Zulongin's. It was hard to believe they were human hands. First breakthrough. I made the first breakthrough in Jadeskin. Hansen practiced Jadeskin in excitement, turning his entire body into jade. Jadeskin. This is what Jadeskin truly meant. I made it. Hansen could not resist his excitement. Watching his translucent body, he almost laughed out loud. Looking at himself in the mirror, he saw his skin became more tender and smooth. However, there was not much of a difference between now and then. His eyes were more watery like gemstones, which made him look quite charming. If I continue this way, I will be more and more like a gigolo. Feeling upset, Hansen hoped he could look more masculine. However, that was no big deal. There was no need to care about the appearance. Hansen ran microcrystal again, wanting to make sure that he was still able to practice this hyper-geno art. Very soon, Hansen opened his mouth wide. After practicing microcrystal, he found that microcrystal was just a small part of Jadeskin. When he used microcrystal, Hansen felt his body was toughened because the body cells were crystallized, making him look like a statue carved out of crystal. Microcrystal, I achieved it. The hypergeno art that took others 2 to 3 decades to practice was easily achieved by Hansen. Even Hansen himself could not believe that was happening. Shortly, Hansen found that it was not really a fact worth celebrating. The effect of microcrystal was far worse than jadeskin after he made the first breakthrough. The only good thing about microcrystal was that now he had an excuse to cover the fact that he had been practicing jadeskin. After finishing his task on the warship, Hansen had some free time again to enter God's sanctuary. Don Manley had finished recruiting. 80 to 90% of the people living in that area joined Goddess Gang that Hansen had formed and signed formal contracts. Although Hansen needed to provide some meat at low costs, it was nothing compared to what he had gained. When he was ready to conquer the spirit shelter, all these people needed to play a part. Young Manley told Hansen that the recruitment did not go well initially, because Uncle King was the first to join the gang. Everyone else followed. Hansen nodded and did not speak. The Nings were expressing kindness to him, but Hansen did not dare to treat them as friends. He still knew too little about things in the past, so he could not decide whether the Nings were friends or enemies. Now that Goddess Gang is formed, what's your next move? Young Manley asked Hansen. She was quite reluctant to call the gang Goddess Gang, because there were less than 10 women in the entire gang, and none of them could be called a goddess. However, Hansen insisted on the name. Since it was just a name, Young Manley did not care. She did not know that in Hansen's eyes, the gang members recruited at this point were all just the help. The Goddess Gang he was going to formulate was a group of spirit beauties. Wherever he appeared in the future, 3,000 spirit beauties would clear the way for him, which would be a dream coming true. Of course, the condition was that his super body king spirit could make spirits give their allegiance to him. Otherwise, his dream would just be a dream, not to mention a group. He would not even be able to get a few spirits working for him. Let them gobble up the meat first, and then we will train them and select the best of them to form the backbone of Goddess Gang. Then, we'll go conquer the spirit shelter. Hansen was waiting for Zero to come and take her to smash the spirit shelter, so he would spend the time to train these people. Young master, if you want to hunt, I know exactly the place that suits the team, suggested Uncle King when he heard Hansen was going to do that. Hansen heeded his advice and asked him to lead the way. The team marched toward the glaciers Uncle King was talking about. Although it was an area of glaciers, avalanche or accidents rarely happened. Hansen did not worry about that. All they had run into on the way was a few ice-armored beasts, so Hansen did not bother to move. Riding on the back of the golden growler, Hansen was reading as he ate the jerked bird leg of the evil-blooded condor while watching the team hunt. Hansen looked through the database on Daphne for information about beast soul glyphs and indeed found something. No one had ever discovered beast soul glyphs in First God's Sanctuary, but the beast soul type started to come up in Second God's Sanctuary and above. In addition, only mutant or sacred blood creatures would produce beast soul glyphs. The functions of beast soul glyphs were very complicated. Each one had its own unique function. In conclusion, a beast soul glyph would give its user a certain ability. For example, there was a kind of bear glyph that could enhance one's strength, and there was a wind beast glyph that would increase the user's speed. Since no one had hunted an evil-blooded condor before, Hansen was not sure what kind of ability he would get. He had been observing for days and did not discover anything different when using the beast soul. So, what is the function of the evil-blooded condor glyph? Hansen could not figure it out and had to put it aside. At this point, Hansen finally understood how great it was to be a gang leader, watching his subordinates killing creatures bravely. Hansen knew that he would eventually gain the better half of their labor. There were not a lot of members in the gang at the moment. In the future, if the Goddess Gang had thousands or tens of thousands of members, he would be able to receive a significant amount of income from his cut of everyday hunting. It was equally beneficial to the gang members. Compared to hunting alone, it was much easier to hunt in a gang. At the same time, the income was equally good or even better. Their safety was also enhanced. Young master, let's stay in this area. If we move further, there might be mutant creatures. Uncle King stopped and said to Hansen, let's continue. Mutant creatures are even better. Hansen commanded the team to go forward, because he was not that interested in hunting primitive creatures. Although they were following Hansen's order, many people started to feel worried, looking left and right for fear that there might really be mutant creatures. The only person able to fight a mutant creature in this place was Uncle King. If others encountered mutant creatures, they were likely to become a meal of the creatures. Although Young Manley wanted to talk Hansen out of it, she knew it would not serve any purpose, because Hansen would not listen to her at all. Young Manley ended up saying nothing. Uncle King did not argue either, continuing to lead the way. All of a sudden, they heard loud hoofbeat and beast roar. A giant elephant with white fur rushed toward them from afar, leaving one huge footprint after another. All the glaciers seemed to be shaking. Snowflakes were flowing everywhere. White mammoth, someone suddenly exclaimed. The entire group scattered like a mob. Hansen saw most people were running and only Jan Manley, Uncle King, and a few gang members stayed next to him, summoning beast souls and ready to fight. It was easy to tell that the gang members were all frightened, their hands on their weapons shaking. All other people were running fast, about which Hansen was not surprised. These people had lost their confidence a long while ago, so it was natural that they reacted this way facing danger. Hansen had considered them no good in his heart. In the future, he would not waste his time cultivating these people. To the contrary, Zuyu and other young people did not escape and remained on Hansen's side although they were frightened. Hansen thought they could be further cultivated to become leaders, commanding the future forces in Goddess Gang. Although they were all quite young and probably had worse physique than the older people who had run away, these were no big deal. Hansen could easily use large amounts of meat to give them better geno point counts. There was always a way to enhance one's physique and martial arts skills. However, one's character was not something could be cultivated. In Hansen's eyes, Zuyu and other young people were all valuable assets. Clear, Hansen yelled, commanding the gang members to step back. He rolled on the back of the golden growler and charged the white mammoth. All the young gang members looked at Hansen in surprise. As a mutant creature, the white mammoth was a top one. Even someone like Uncle King did not dare to face a white mammoth head-on. But Hansen simply threw himself at the creature. Watching Hansen with a grim face, Uncle King murmured to himself in a low voice, "Is he really the descendant of Instructor Han?" Young Manly drew her bowstring and aimed her arrow at an eye of the white mammoth, ready to support Hansen when necessary. However, the bow and arrow she was using at the moment were still sacred blood beast souls of First God's Sanctuary, which almost did not work at all on a mutant creature in Second God's Sanctuary like the white mammoth. The golden growler was going fast. In terms of size, the golden growler was no smaller than the white mammoth. As the golden growler ran, its body was quickly growing. The moment it was about to clash with the white mammoth, the golden growler was already as large as a hill, even bigger than the mammoth. Compared to the golden growler, the white mammoth suddenly looked mini, like a baby elephant in front of an adult elephant. Boom! The two beasts clashed together. Although the golden growler was bigger than the white mammoth, it was not at any disadvantage, but stepped back as well as the white mammoth. Roar! The golden growler growled reluctantly. It was the absolute king in First God's Sanctuary. No creature could fight it at all. However, it was forced back by a white mammoth, which made the lion very mad. The white mammoth also roared and ran toward the golden growler. Boom! The two huge animals were fighting it out again, making all sorts of horrendous noises. The surrounding glaciers were broken into pieces and there was snow everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. The golden growler and the white mammoth became extremely mad at each other, so neither of them intended to step back. They ran into each other hard like two oxen fighting for a cow. The gang members were dumbstruck. They had seen many mounts before, but had never seen a mount that was able to fight the creature. It was simply beyond imagination. A normal mount would not attack at all. However, this giant golden lion mount was somewhat different. The people that had run away saw what was happening and slowed down, looking at the golden growler throwing itself at the white mammoth incredulously. That is a mutant creature. What's the deal of the mount? It's so strong that it could fight the white mammoth. Is that a mutant mount? Even if it is still just a mount and should not be able to fight a creature like this. Hansen sighed inwardly. After all, the golden growler was just a super creature from First God's Sanctuary. Although it was special, because it was limited to its level, it was not as strong as the white mammoth. Watching the golden growler falling farther behind under the impact from the white mammoth and growling helplessly, Hansen could not help becoming silent. He was reminded of the large golden growler's fierceness. Between the heaven and earth, no one could stand one blow from its paw. This beast soul golden growler was indeed too sullen. If the black crystal could really turn the beast souls of First God's Sanctuary into the beast souls of Second God's Sanctuary, I would definitely choose the golden growler to evolve next. Hansen thought. He did not want to see a great king being a loser. Although he was thinking that, Hansen decided to make a move. The moment the golden growler clashed with the white mammoth again, Hansen jumped up from the head of the golden growler and dashed at the white mammoth like a meteor. The physique of the white mammoth was even better than that of golden growler. However, it still had to step back when the golden growler threw itself at him. At this very moment, Hansen had already reached the mammoth. Holding the cursed wolf dagger in his hand, Hansen sent himself into the wheel-sized eye of the mammoth. Roar! The white mammoth lifted its front legs. Blood ran into rivers flowing from its eyes. The beast screamed loud. The next moment, the stomach of the white mammoth was suddenly slashed open. A bloody figure came out of it. Boom! The white mammoth quickly fell, splashing ice and snow everywhere. Without looking at the body of the white mammoth, the bloody figure walked to the rest of the team when cleaning the dagger casually. Almost no one was able to forget this moment. The gigantic dead creature and the bloody figure were written into their memory internally. After killing the white mammoth, Hansen had established his prestige in Goddess Gang. People had officially recognized him as the leader. Many young people even saw him as an idol. The Goddess Gang had become more and more organized. Hansen was very generous to the members that worked hard, awarding them with lots of meat. And Hansen asked Young Manly to specifically cultivate the young men like Zuyu who dared to risk their lives. Hansen's arrival brought a revolution to the place, although they still did not dare to hunt in remote areas or approach the spirit shelter. With Hansen leading the team, they were able to kill lots of ordinary and primitive creatures at once in the mountains nearby. This gave some hope to the evolvers in this place. Many people who had not entered God's sanctuary in a long time and lost hope returned to the place after hearing the news, wanting to see if the legend was real. It turned out they were ecstatic. The world of ice and snow was no longer silent like before. People were active everywhere. Because Hansen rarely showed up, few people knew what he looked like. Most people only knew the name Hansen. More people thought of Hansen as a legend, a living legend. An evolver who had just entered Second God's Sanctuary for a few months revived a place on his own and inspired lots of desperate people, which could only exist in a legend. Obviously, more people recognized Young Manly, the right-hand woman. Many people assumed that Young Manly was the goddess in Goddess Gang and thought she was Hansen's lady, the mistress of Goddess Gang. Of course, Young Manly had also heard such assumption. In the beginning, she was shy and angry. However, it was impossible for her to clarify every time. After a while, she was tired of correcting others. On this day, when Hansen just teleported into God's sanctuary from the Alliance, someone suddenly ran at him and hugged his thigh full of tears. Juting. As Hansen saw who it was, he could not help feeling dazed. He had no idea that he would run into Juting here. How dare you show your face? You really think I will not kill you, don't you? Hansen's face became stern. Brother, it is meaningless to live in such a spot. Can I follow you? If I can't, I would rather die. Just kill me. Juting would not let go of Hansen's leg. Hansen chuckled inwardly and thought to himself, this guy is quite unlucky to be assigned here. He must have gone through many hardships. It looks like he's going mad. When did you arrive here? How come I never saw you? So, you want to follow me. But why should I agree to that? Hansen looked at Juting with half a smile. No matter what Juting wanted, Hansen would like to collect something from him first. Brother, no matter what, I should be much more useful than those ordinary people, right? Juting blinked and answered. And much more dangerous, Hansen replied quietly. Didn't Instructor Han mention that my ancestor was also a member of the Secret Service, a colleague of his? Juting quickly said. I don't know. Hansen did not want to comment. Give me something solid. If you want to follow me, you must pay up front first, Hansen said. Juting said with a sad face, after I came to this damned place, I have gained nothing and lost almost all the beast souls I brought from First God's Sanctuary. Now I am so poor that all I have is money. Do you want money? Name a number, and I'll pay you no matter how much. Don't you still have 7 twists? Hansen said abruptly. Hansen had always coveted 7 twists from the Chens. Although he could fly with beast soul wings, the speed would be determined by the strength of the beast soul instead of his strength. Therefore, Hansen was very interested in this technique that could send him in the air using what he got. However, 7 twists was the family secret of the Chens. No outsiders could be taught. With such an opportunity, Hansen wanted to test if Juting could teach him 7 twists. Although 7 twists is the family secret of the Chens, there is a way for you to learn. However, since it runs in the family, there is a rule that the secret could not be leaked. If you want to learn, you will have to become a student of my family, said Juting. Although Juting did not say no, there was no way that Hansen would agree to become a student of the Chens, which meant he could not learn the Hyper-Geno art. So, there is no way around that. Hansen turned around and was ready to leave. Stop, listen to me. Even if I was willing to ignore the rules and teach you 7 twists, all I knew was the first 3 twists anyway. Without the special Geno solutions, there was no way you could succeed in practicing it either. Zhu Ting saw Hansen was still leaving and said quickly, "Brother, hear me out. When I was chased around by the mutant creature a while back, I found a great place which you would definitely be interested in. How about I show you the place? If you think it is interesting, just let me join Goddess Gang. If you think the place is no good, I will no longer bother you." "What kind of a good place?" Hansen asked. "A nest?" Zhu Ting lowered his voice and said to Hansen. Hansen looked at him surprised. The fact that Zhu Ting found a nest meant he had found a sacred blood beast soul. What a lucky guy. "Take me there first." Hansen thought about it and said. He was not worried that Zhu Ting might have any tricks up his sleeve. Even if there was a sacred blood creature, Hansen could protect himself. However, in the case that there was a sacred blood creature or even a super creature in the nest, it would be terribly difficult for him to break the egg. Zhu Ting took Hansen out of the ice cave and entered the mountains. Hansen felt they were going too slow and summoned the golden growler, asking Zhu Ting to sit with him. "Brother, what a nice ride. Do you want to sell this mount?" "I could accept any price," Zhu Ting said admiringly, looking at the golden growler. "I will not sell this one, but if you want to purchase a beast soul, I do have one." Hansen suddenly had an idea. The Berserk Ice armored beast soul that he gained the last time was useless to him. If Zhu Ting was willing to pay a high price, Hansen would like to sell it to him. "What beast soul? A mutant one or a sacred blood one?" Zhu Ting looked at Hansen in excitement. "A primitive beast soul of ice armored beast," replied Hansen. Zhu Ting was slightly disappointed, but he still said, "Well, that is nice as well. It is beast soul armor, relatively strong among primitive beast souls." "It is a berserk one," Hansen added. Zhu Ting suddenly widened his eyes and said, "Brother, you've got a berserk ice armored beast soul. Among primitive creatures, only one in several dozen could become berserk. And it was even harder to gain the beast soul, which was why a berserk beast soul was much more expensive than the beast soul on the same level. I won't force you to teach me 7 twists since you are not allowed to. But your family must have an S-class footwork designed for evolvers." Hansen looked at Zhu Ting and said. Zhu Ting suddenly became hesitant and said, "Well, forget about it. I don't really need a beast soul." Hansen knew what he meant. A berserk beast soul of ice armored beast was worth $10 million tops after taking into consideration of the scarcity of the beast souls. However, that was too little to trade for an S-class secret footwork. No one would make such a trade. "Relax, I'm not trying to trade the berserk beast soul for your footwork. I will pay you an S-class St. Hall license of evolver level for the footwork. The berserk beast soul could be considered your service fee," Hansen said with a smile. "The Chins have an evolver footwork treading cloud. If you're interested, I could give up my dignity and get it for you." "Tell me about it. What kind of footwork is treading cloud?" Hansen squinted and asked. Zhu Ting demonstrated what it was like, which made Hansen's eyes light up. Treading cloud was a footwork that emphasized leg skills. After it was practiced successfully, the body cells of one's legs could be enhanced. Treading cloud meant it was so easy to reach the sky after practicing this footwork. Although it was an exaggeration, it showed that the footwork emphasized explosive leg strength. To Hansen's satisfaction, after practicing treading cloud, although he would not be able to leverage on the air 7 times, he would be able to leverage on the air once. Unlike what Hansen had invented, this was a perfect leverage. Zhu Ting took Hansen to find the nest. With the speed of the golden growler, it took them more than half a day to spot layering mountains formulating a life lotus, which was the entrance to the nest. Luckily, there was no creatures nearby. They climbed over the mountains and went down the entrance until they reached the green gold wall. The green gold wall was still intact. No one had entered. Although Zhu Ting found the place, he did not dare to enter. Zhu Ting was smart in that he knew what was within his ability and what was beyond, which was not something everyone knew. After all, men are animals of emotions, so it was hard for them to keep rational all the time. "Wait outside. I'll go check it out," Hansen said to Zhu Ting and broke the green gold wall to enter. The omniscient green light made the large nest a scary space. Oddly shaped cells were everywhere, all intact. There was no way to tell which one had nurtured a creature. Hansen slowly approached the cells, but because there were too many cells, they were all crammed together. There was no way to go through other than climbing over the cells. Hansen did not dare to jump onto a cell. Staring at a 20 feet tall oval cell, he slowly walked ahead, feeling uncomfortable as if something was about to get wrong. Roar! When Hansen was about 30 feet from the cell, it suddenly exploded. A black creature with 2 silver horns and bat wings that looked like a gargoyle suddenly rushed out from the broken cell. Hansen only glanced at it before he started to run as fast as his legs could carry him. Although he had not fought the creature yet, judging by its speed, Hansen was sure that the gargoyle was a sacred blood creature with a physique over 100. Hansen was glad that it was the first thing that caught his eyes. If Hansen ran into this creature when he had gone deep already, it would be much harder for him to run away. Hansen only ran a few steps when the gargoyle caught up with him. Its arm as strong as a marble column quickly swung at Hansen's back. On its claw, each of the nails was more than half a foot long, as sharp as a tungsten dagger. Even a body made of Z-steel would be broken by such nails. Without turning back, Hansen moved his body like a snake away from the blow of the gargoyle, as if he had eyes on his back. Then Hansen continued to run in a twisted route. Flapping its wings, the gargoyle was behind Hansen immediately. However, its blow was useless again. Hansen was as slippery as an eel, slipping through the gargoyle's arms again and again. Hansen looked to the direction of the entrance and saw that Juting had left, faster than a rabbit. Having failed several times, the gargoyle quickly howled as Hansen was about to run to the narrow path. The silver horns of the gargoyle suddenly glowed and the silver color started to bleed toward the gargoyle's black body. All of a sudden, the gargoyle became a silver statue, which looked strangely glamorous. "Damn it, a berserk sacred blood creature," Hansen exclaimed. The silver gargoyle almost instantaneously appeared behind Hansen, clawing at Hansen's head. The speed of the silver gargoyle was so fast that Hansen had no time to dodge the blow, although he was trying to use kiting skills as much as possible. In front of the absolute speed, all his efforts were useless. Hansen gritted his teeth and used Jadeskin. Reaching a hand at the thick arm of the berserk beast, Hansen was not trying to beat the creature with his force. As the two arms clashed, Hansen entangled the thick arm of the silver gargoyle like a snake and slid onto its body, perfectly combining ghost haunt and diversion. Hansen also used the flexibility he gained from practicing Jadeskin to reach this effect. The silver gargoyle tried to catch Hansen, who was hanging on its back, while Hansen had slid down to the gargoyle's crotch and hitting the part hard. Boom! Hansen's jade-like fist hit the gargoyle's crotch hard, making it scream madly. The gargoyle quickly used both hands to claw at Hansen. Hansen turned his body around on the gargoyle's thigh and moved back to its back. Grabbing the gargoyle's wings, Hansen quickly chopped his hand at its neck. Moving around on the gargoyle's body, the gargoyle tried to catch Hansen in madness but kept failing. However, the physique of the berserk silver gargoyle was so strong that even after Hansen used Jadeskin, he could only make its silver body swell a little. Hansen did not dare to use the cursed wolf dagger, because it was not strong enough to break this body, and because holding the dagger would affect Hansen's movements. Hansen even tried to claw at the gargoyle's eyes, but it was equally useless. Its eyes were as tough as its body, made of silver metal. Hansen felt the time, which was less than a minute, was as long as hours. It was not an easy thing to fight the gargoyle this way. Hansen had used his physical and mental power to his limit. Every slight movement was carefully calculated. Both his physical and mental strength was depleted. Even so, Hansen was still facing worse risks. The berserk gargoyle became faster and faster. A few times, its nails had scratched Hansen, making him bleed immediately. Hansen was not shaken at all. He continued to slither on the gargoyle's body like a snake, but his moving range was smaller and smaller. Eventually, the berserk gargoyle pushed Hansen so hard that he had nowhere to go. The gargoyle quickly clawed at Hansen, was right on its body. As the sharp silver nails were about to stab into Hansen's body, Hansen quickly pushed the gargoyle's head and jumped in the air, avoiding its claw. Hansen took the opportunity to run out of the nest. He could still vaguely hear the roaring of the raging silver gargoyle. The physique of the silver gargoyle was so good that Hansen could not kill it at the moment. However, since he had already learned that there was a sacred blood creature in this place, he could always come back when he had enough Geno points. "Brother, you are here. Are you okay?" Zhu Ting was waiting at the entrance, looking down from time to time. "Luckily, I ran out, but I could not kill that thing," Hansen said and started to walk away. "How about me joining Goddess Gang?" Zhu Ting came up to Hansen and asked. "If you want to, I'll permit it," Hansen said casually. He would keep Zhu Ting around for the moment because he was still thinking about 7 twists of the chens. After leaving the nest, Hansen went back to the Alliance and urged Zhu Ting to get the Geno solutions as soon as possible. It was almost time for Zero to return to the God's Sanctuary, so Hansen thought it was time to conquer the Spirit Shelter. However, he would like for everyone of Goddess Gang to join the war against the Spirit Shelter. Otherwise, if he went himself, the gang members would not appreciate the gains. They did not fight for that much. Of course, Hansen was going to make sure he will get the Spirit Stone in the shelter. He did not care about anything else that much. After Hansen returned to Daphne, he finished his own task and looked at his future schedule. In 2 days, he would join the cooking team to prepare food. Soldiers could only have food for 5 days out of a month. Normally, they would just take nutrition solutions. However, the expert panel was different. They ate every day, so the existence of the cookhouse was mainly meant for the expert panel. After resting for 2 days, reading and training, it was Hansen's turn to work. Hansen finally understood that the work of the cookhouse was difficult sometimes. Those experts and scholars were very picky about what they ate. According to the rules, each of them shall have 3 dishes and 1 soup per meal, and there must be meat. In addition, several professors in the expert panel could even order their own food, which was a privilege that even Jia Yanren and Chen Xiaoshan did not enjoy. Hansen was not a great cook, so all he could do was to prepare the raw materials and transfer the food to the plates. "You must be the new cookhouse recruit Hansen. I heard you passed sprint at level 10. A young researcher of the expert panel asked Hansen while he was getting his food. "It was because I have seen it before. It's no big deal," Hansen said casually. "You graduated from Blackhawk?" the young researcher asked. "Yes," Hansen slightly frowned and replied. He glanced at the young researcher who was about 30 years old and quite good-looking. His lips were thin, which gave him a feminine look. "Not bad. When I was in Alliance Central Military Academy, Blackhawk ranked about 100. I wonder how it's doing now," the young researcher said quietly. Hansen felt the guy's tone was a bit off, squinted and said, "I'm not sure. I did not have many opportunities to see people from Alliance Central Military Academy. I was in an archery tournament against that school though. Alliance Central Military Academy was quite impressive, so it took me some effort to get rid of them and gain the championship," Hansen said casually. He did not want to be nice to people like this. Haha, if you want to brag, there is still a limit. In what kind of tournament can Blackhawk beat Alliance Central Military Academy? Is it a bragging contest? The reply of the researcher made everyone in the expert panel laugh. These researchers mainly came from Alliance Central Military Academy, because there were not many academies that had the major of crystallizer ruins research. Most of the professors that focused on crystallizer culture taught at Alliance Central Military Academy. So the experts and professors in the expert panel were also mostly affiliated to Alliance Central Military Academy. As the graduates of the best military school in the Alliance, they were of course arrogant. Several researchers from the expert panel had also tried Sprint, but none of them passed level X. They all felt quite content when hearing a cookhouse soldier pass level X, because they knew Hansen was familiar with the system. There was no way Hansen was as strong as them. This researcher named Tang Xin was very pissed about this, which was why he provoked Hansen. "I'm so sorry. I have no idea Alliance Central Military Academy is such a big deal. Unfortunately, I have already graduated and could no longer participate in the games. Otherwise, I would be easier on them and make them look better," Hansen shrugged and said with a smile. As Hansen said that, many researchers looked to him. Even several professors couldn't help glancing at him. "Okay, so you say you beat Alliance Central Military Academy. So, tell me, where and when did you do that?" Tang Xin snorted and said, because he did not believe Hansen at all. "I don't remember which game, since it's such a trivial matter for me. You could go search my name, and you will probably see it." Hansen knocked the spatula on the edge of the plate. "If you don't have anything else to say, please give way to others. They have to eat as well." Tang Xin was a bit upset. Tang Xin gritted his teeth and walked to Professor Lai Mingtang, pleading, "Professor, could you look it up for me to see if he was telling the truth?" On Daphne, ordinary people did not have the access to the Skynet. All they had was an internal database, which was why Tang Xin asked Professor Lai Mingtang to look it up for him. Lai Mingtang thought about it and said, "We are all co-workers, so there's no need to get to the bottom of this. We can just laugh it out." Tang Xin did not want to let it go and said, "Professor, as a graduate from Alliance Central Military Academy, I could not stand vicious words against my alma mater. I must clear it up." All the researchers and cookhouse soldiers looked to the screen. Before long, his face became stern. At that time, almost every media reported the archery tournament between the Emperor and the Monster. It was fair to say that the match was a historic one. The game ended Jingzhou in Alliance Central Military Academy's rule in the league. The nickname of Hansen, Emperor, was broadcasted in the league by all kinds of media. Any report would reflect how the game went down and how Hansen performed. The media almost described Hansen as a godsend archer. Although it was exaggerated, there was no doubt that Hansen did lead Blackhawk to beat Alliance Central Military Academy, which was the ruler at the time. As Hansen had said, in that game, Blackhawk was the winner. The researchers suddenly changed their attitude about Hansen. A cookhouse soldier, even one on Daphne, should not be too good a fighter. Otherwise, he would not end up as a cookhouse soldier. However, no one had expected for Hansen, the new recruit, to have such a successful past. Being able to be called the strongest person in the entire league was an honor that none of the researchers who graduated from Alliance Central Military Academy had enjoyed, including Tang Xin. After all, when they were at school, they were not the strongest person on campus. Hansen, I did not realize you were so good when you were at school. The fat squad leader was so happy that he patted Hansen on the shoulder with his meaty hand. Some researchers had always looked down on ordinary soldiers, and Tang Xin was the worst of them. The fat squad leader was very happy to see his face slapped by Hansen. I was not that good. It's just the opponent was too weak. Hansen was not a pushover. Since Tang Xin had tried to bully him, he would punch back as well. Tang Xin's face became purple, the corner of his mouth twitching without making a single sound. He quit lunch and left immediately. Well done, Hansen. That Tang Xin is such a snob, mean and picky as if he was better than all of us. The guy annoyed the hell out of me. Hansen, be careful in the future. That Tang Xin is a petty person. You are probably already on his enemy list. Since you were so great in military school and got the rank of major, how come you came here to be a cookhouse soldier? Lai Mingling couldn't help asking. In fact, my dream is to be a soldier on the warship, even as a cookhouse soldier, which is why I'm here. Hansen was telling the truth. However, he did not tell the whole truth. He wanted to be a soldier on the warship of Jai Yanren. When Hansen entered God's sanctuary again, he eventually saw the pretty face of Zero. It seems it's time to conquer the spirit shelter. Hansen found Yang Manly to summon everyone in God is again. Everyone, I decided to set out to conquer the spirit shelter tomorrow and use that shelter as the base of Goddess Gang. If anyone wants to quit, now is the time. I do not want to force you, so I will let you go with no strings attached. Hansen's gaze swept across people's faces. Captain, is it too early for us to conquer the spirit shelter? There is an aristocrat spirit in the spirit shelter and many mutant creatures. We do not have quite the strength yet to do that. How about we develop our strength a bit further and do that when we have all maxed out on ordinary genopoints and primitive genopoints? In that case, we would have a much better chance. Yes, Captain, we should focus on cultivation now. We have no idea how many mutant creatures there are in the spirit shelter. Hansen glanced at the mob he was leading and said coldly, Today I am gathering you to tell you my decision. So, all you need to do is to execute it or quit. I do not need your advice. However, there is one thing I must state clearly right now. If you quit at this point, Goddess Gang will never welcome you back. Not now, and definitely not when we have conquered the spirit shelter. It's your own choice to stay or go. Hansen's words brought silence to the scene. Very soon, someone stood out, gritted his teeth and told Hansen, Sorry, Captain, we do not have enough resources to take down the spirit shelter. I can't risk it with my life. Bring me his contract. Hansen did not answer but asked Young Manly to bring the guy's contract and voided it. With someone being the first, many more stood out to break off their contract and leave the Goddess Gang. Not many people believed that Hansen could really conquer the spirit shelter. There were so many mutant creatures in the spirit shelter, and an aristocrat spirit who was basically immortal. Those were all huge troubles. Before destroying their spirit stones, the spirits were almost immortal in their own shelters. In addition, no one had any idea how many mutant creatures and primitive creatures there were. Goddess Gang had a total of 200 people, and many of them were still lacking in their primitive genopoint count. They could not even fight primitive creatures one-on-one. Spirit Shelter was simply too big a goal. Goddess Gang, which had 200 people, lost the better half of its members soon. Only about 36 of people remained. Hansen was fully prepared in advance. However, he still did not expect to lose so many members. At first glance, most people who stayed were young people like Zuyu. Only a few of them were older. To Hansen's surprise, the middle-aged person who used to throw sarcastic comments at him was still in the team and did not choose to leave. Hansen still remembered that his name was Zheng Guoxian. He came to Second God's Sanctuary 20 years ago as a sacred evolver. However, he did not expect to end up in such shitty place. For 2 decades, he did nothing. When Hansen established Goddess Gang, he joined the gang but did not show too much impressive performance. The next morning, they were missing several people. In the end, including Yan Manly, Uncle King, and Zhu Ting, there were 20 people in total. Let's go. Hansen did not waste his words and commanded everyone to march toward the big mountain where the spirit shelter was located. Watching the young men following Hansen, many people even showed pity. Of course, more people were delighted to witness their departure. They even thought, coming from a prominent family with the respect from Starry Group, Hansen became arrogant. He deserves to die in the spirit shelter. It's a pity though that we are going to lose a good man like Uncle King and those young people. People of worse characters even wished for Hansen to die there and for young Manly and Zero to return safely so that they would have a chance at the ladies. The 20 people marched toward the spirit shelter in heavy snow and soon disappeared on the vast snow field. Many people thought it was very likely that they were gone forever. The closer they got to the snow mountain, the more nervous they became. Even Uncle King put on a solemn look. Uncle King knew for sure that Hansen was not a stupid man. However, in his eyes, they did not have enough to take down the spirit shelter. If Hansen did not have any backup, they would be taking a huge risk. It would be hard for them to escape death. However, because of the blind trust in the name Hanjinjai, Uncle King did not want to quit. Are you cold? In the fluttering snowflakes, Hansen held Zero's hands and warmed them up with his breath. No, Zero shook her head quietly. Hansen then remembered that Zero had even better physique than he did. There was no way she would fear such weather. This is the spirit shelter. Are we really going up? Juting looked at the big mountain ahead of them and asked again. Certainly, Hansen urged the golden growler to step on the big mountain first. The rest of them looked at each other and then all followed Hansen uphill. Many of them were walking stiffly with no expression on their face, staring at the spirit shelter that looked like an old castle. The spirit shelter was quiet. Except for the sound of snow falling, there was absolutely no sound. The shelter looked like a lifeless castle with no residents. Uncle King, Juting, and young Manly could not help frowning. This was obviously quite abnormal. Creatures and the spirit should have noticed them a long while ago. However, there was no noise at all. The gates of the shelter were open, but no creatures came out of it, which was simply odd. Wait a second. Hansen commanded the group to stop, summon the golden rock worm king, and commanded it to fly into the gates of the shelter. Very soon, the golden rock worm king returned. The message brought back to Hansen was that there was nothing in the spirit shelter, not a single creature. Nothing. Hansen frowned slightly. The situation was clearly out of his expectation. The group marched toward the architecture and looked around vigilantly. However, they found nothing. It was as if the entire spirit shelter was empty. Having reached the destination smoothly, Hansen pushed open the gates and walked into the hall that looked like a palace. Indeed, there was a spirit stone with an alluring glow set between the eyebrows of a huge statue of deity. Spirit stone. Zuyu and other young men became excited. As long as the spirit stone was destroyed, the spirit would be dead no matter where it was. However, before they even walked to the spirit stone, a figure suddenly appeared from the side of the room. It was an elegant woman dressed like a priest, holding an ice staff in her hand. It was the same aristocrat spirit that Hansen had seen. Attention, yelled Uncle King and summoned his beast souls. Actually, even without Uncle King's wearing, everyone had already summoned their beast souls and looked around vigilantly. The spirit looked at the group of people, smiled coldly, and raised the staff in her hand. Light suddenly covered her body, turning her into an aristocrat fighter in ice armor with red patterns. The staff turned into an ice spear. Roar. Almost immediately, all sorts of creatures came to the empty castle. Hundreds and thousands of ice-armored beasts and other creatures besieged the hall, throwing themselves at the intruders. Go deeper and destroy the spirit stone, Uncle King exclaimed and charged the statue of deity. However, before he made a move, a dozen creatures suddenly appeared from behind the statue. Each of them a mutant creature. There were huge snow wolf and bears, as well as dark bats and all sorts of birds. Those mutant creatures completely blocked the path toward the statue. Also, they were led by the aristocrat spirit. Even Uncle King was shocked and stopped, finding it impossible to destroy the spirit stone directly. Groups of creatures had flooded into the hall from outside. Although they were all primitive creatures, they were so huge in number that even if the group of people wanted to kill their way out, it would take them a long time. In addition, they were in the spirit shelter and the gates had been closed. There was no way for them to go back even if they wanted to. Human, you will regret that you stole my pet. The cold face of the spirits was emotionless. She pointed at Hansen with her ice spear. After that sentence, the ice-armored beasts flooded into the hall and threw themselves at the group of people with no fear for death. However, the mutant creatures did not seem to be attacking. All they were doing was to protect the statue of deity. Clearly, they were trying to weaken the group using endless primitive creatures first. The spirit herself walked to Hansen with her ice spear in hand, wanting to kill Hansen with her own hands to get her revenge. Everyone else looked pale. They were trapped in this place. They could not run away or destroy the spirit stone. Hansen did not seem to be worried about the situation at all. He walked to the spirit and said, "You're very smart. I could even call you sly. You have successfully lured us into the trap you have set up. The spirit curled her lips and looked content. She said coldly, "The moment you decided to go against me, your death has been certain. Unfortunately, there is one thing you did wrong," Hansen continued to say as he walked. "What is it?" Unexpectedly, the spirit asked with her brows knitted. "You should not let me come this far. Your favorite trap is your biggest mistake." Hansen quickly rushed to the huge statue of deity with the spirit stone like a tornado. The spirit sneered and swept her ice spear at Hansen, trying to stop him. However, Hansen did not lower his speed at all. He used great strength with his legs yet put his upper body horizontal, running forward but almost lying on the ground. Hansen dodged the attack from the spirit in a weird pose and continued toward the statue at a high speed. The mutant creatures roared loud and threw themselves at Hansen like demons from hell. Jen Guoxing watched Hansen going in the middle of the mutant creatures with a complicated expression. 20 years ago, he was as brave as Hansen. At that day and age when it was still difficult to hunt a sacred blood creature, he used his diligence, talent, and special privileges coming from his family to max out his sacred genopoints and evolved as a sacred blood evolver in First God's Sanctuary. However, after he entered Second God's Sanctuary, when he was about to realize all his dreams, he found out what a terrible place he ended up at. There was no strong teammates or available beast souls. He needed to risk his life even when trying to kill a primitive creature. At the same time, he must avoid the spirit shelter and large groups of creatures at all times. In the beginning, Zheng Guoxing still fought with some hope. Shortly, he discovered that it was almost impossible to max out on ordinary genopoints in this place, let alone primitive genopoints. It did not mean that Zheng Guoxing was not strong enough to kill an ordinary creature. He was capable of that, but there were only so many types of ordinary creatures. As he ate many of a type, that type no longer provided ordinary genopoints for him. If he wanted to look for other ordinary creatures, he needed to go beyond the spirit shelter, which was something he could not achieve. It was the same case for primitive creatures, which made Zheng Guoxing feel desperate. There was no way he could continue to increase the ordinary and mutant genopoints, and he was not able to kill a mutant creature. Zheng Guoxing gave up hope completely. As he lost hope, he spent his days on nothing for 20 years. When Hansen appeared, Zheng Guoxing felt like he had seen himself 20 years ago, so confident, proud, and arrogant. Subconsciously, Zheng Guoxing tried to say no to Hansen, like he did to his younger self. However, after Hansen created one miracle after another, Zheng Guoxing suddenly realized that he wished Hansen success strongly in his heart, because he saw Hansen as his younger self. He did not really want to lose or continue to be a loser. He wanted to see someone succeed. That was why Zheng Guoxing joined Goddess Gang. When a lot of people told him to leave, he still followed Hansen to the spirit shelter. He only wanted to give Hansen a chance. Maybe he wanted to give himself a chance. Maybe there was a miracle in this world. And maybe he could start over again. He was 40 years old. Maybe he was no longer young, but he was not old either. Zheng Guoxing wanted to stand up again, to feel the urge to pursue something with all he got, and to go after his own dream. I am not old yet, Zheng Guoxing told himself. Watching Hansen throwing himself at the mutant creatures, Zheng Guoxing felt he had gone back to the hot-blooded era, when he was still fearless. At that moment, Zheng Guoxing deeply felt that his blood had not gone cold yet. His heart was still warm. He still wanted to go to the top of all mountains like a man. Kill! Zheng Guoxing roared and wielded his broadsword at an incoming ice-armored beast, beheading the beast immediately. With the roar from Zheng Guoxing, Hansen also charged the mutant creatures. A red and golden firebird spread its beautiful wings in the hall and brought a pretty aura to everyone's beast souls. People found that the abilities of their beast souls were significantly enhanced, which made it much easier for them to cope with the creatures. Beast soul aura. Is it a sacred blood beast soul aura? Ting looked to Hansen in the middle of the mutant creatures in surprise. Unfortunately, Hansen did not have time to answer him. He threw a sharp gaze at the mutant creatures and aristocrat spirits. Every single object of living creature in the hall was imprinted in his mind. Using his brain power, Hansen was quickly calculating every single possibility. Shapeshifting into Fairy Queen made his eyesight sharper and made his enemies look slower, giving him enough time to think. Hansen made a step and turned his entire body into jade. If someone could see his body under his armor, they would certainly appreciate how gorgeous and dedicated it looked. Under the attack of a dozen mutant creatures and the aristocrat spirit, Hansen was not in a hurry. He looked so calm that it seemed that nothing could affect him. However, if Hansen's moves were to be observed closely, each and every one of his moves had a strong sense of purpose. No extra movements were made. His entire body was like a highly efficient machine. generating all the power he got. The aristocrat's spirit wielded the ice spear, trying to kill Hansen. A dozen mutant creatures tried to circle him, but Hansen found a slim chance of survival in a seemingly impossible way, breaking through the block of the mutant creatures and rushing toward the gigantic statue of deity. The aristocrat's spirit was both astonished and mad. Unexpectedly, she could not even catch up with Hansen and had to watch him beating one mutant creature after another. In just a dozen seconds, Hansen broke the blockage of the mutant creatures and jumped on the shoulder of the statue. The aristocrat's spirit could not even catch up with Hansen, staring blankly at him. Hansen stood on the shoulder of the statue and took out the spirit stone from the deity's forehead. It all happened so fast that the aristocrat's spirit and the gang members had no time to react. When Hansen got his hands on the spirit stone, he suddenly felt a strange force from his palm, making the spirit stone light up. Ice aristocrat, Snow Charmer, gives you her absolute loyalty and hopes to be your servant. The elegant female spirit suddenly bowed her head and kneeled in front of Hansen. Hansen placed the spirit stone on top of the head of the spirit. The stone suddenly became even more bright, whose light almost blinded everyone. When the lights disappeared, both the stone and Snow Charmer were gone. The spirit swore fealty. The rest people watched it happen, astonished. After a long while, they realized what had happened and looked incredulous. God knows how difficult it was to make a spirit swear allegiance. It was not something that could be achieved by violence. It basically all depended on luck. In Hansen's mind, a spirit stone that looked like a piece of ice decorated with lots of mysterious patterns was floating. In the middle, two strange words Snow Charmer were imprinted. Although Hansen did not know the language, he somehow knew what it meant. Hansen summoned the spirit, and the stone suddenly flew out of his mind, turning into her figure. Snow Charmer, kill those mutant creatures, Hansen thought. Snow Charmer immediately raised her ice spear and moved toward the mutant creatures. Initially, the creatures inside the spirit shelter were following Snow Charmer's command, fearless and regulated. However, when they lost her control, they suddenly became a mob. They lost their cooperation between each other immediately. Although they were still great in number, they no longer had the threat they just did. Snow Charmer wielded her spear and entered the group of mutant creatures. Her fitness was better than normal mutant creatures initially. With her great intelligence and spear skills, she killed her way into the mutant creatures and slaughtered a snow wolf very soon. Snow Charmer killed a mutant creature, Snow-Toothed Wolf. Beast soul of Snow-Toothed Wolf gained. Do you want to withdraw the beast soul? A voice sounded in Hansen's mind as Snow Charmer killed the Snow-Toothed Wolf. Withdraw. Hansen did not feel surprised by that. He had studied how to use a spirit before. According to other people's experience, after he gained the fealty of a spirit, he could withdraw the beast souls that the spirit gained from killing creatures at a time. Equally, he could transfer his beast souls to the spirit. Spirits were loyal subordinates. However, after giving their allegiance to humans, spirits would become integrated with their spirit stones. They would thus lose the ability to come back from death infinitely. If they were killed after they became servants, they would die for real. When the spirits were killed, the beast souls they carried would also disappear. Therefore, one must be careful when giving beast souls to a spirit. Although there were many limitations, the intelligence, skills, and ability to make judgment of spirits made them much better than ordinary beast souls. Especially, spirits had the ability to use beast souls, which meant they could be used like human partners, while beast souls were more like tools. The spear was wielded like a tornado. The lean body of Snow Charmer gave off incredible strength. A snow bear was hunted soon. Snow Charmer killed mutant creature Snow Polar Bear. No beast soul gained. The creatures outside the hall became a mess. They either ran away or defended themselves only, no longer fierce as before. The gang members chased the creatures in the excitement, looking back at Snow Charmer, who looked like Athena, admiringly from time to time. She was an aristocrat spirit, and so elegant and gorgeous. She was even a great fighter. Which man could see her and say they don't envy Hansen? Hansen had already been envisioning the future when he will take a troop formed of all kinds of spirits and rule Second God's sanctuary. Whoever standing in his way would be killed. No one would ever dare to challenge him. The battle only lasted a little over an hour. Lots of creatures ran out of the spirit shelter and many were killed by the humans. Snow Charmer alone killed 4 mutant creatures. Hansen himself killed 2. However, he did not gain other beast souls other than the wolf. We conquered the aristocrat spirit shelter. Suyu and other young people still thought it was hard to believe, as if they were in a dream. We made it. Many people hugged each other, shouting and jumping up and down. Many among the people who followed Hansen here almost had a death wish. When they were trapped, they became almost desperate. However, who knows that they would have such an ending? Most of the people were only slightly injured. None was killed. They took down an aristocrat spirit shelter just like that, which must be a miracle. The person who created a miracle was undoubtedly the man who broke the blockage of a dozen mutant creatures and a spirit and took the spirit stone. Brother, will you sell me this spirit? You can ask for any price. Zhu Ting regarded Snow Charmer with his mouth watering. No way. Hansen turned Zhu Ting down. Of course, Hansen would keep a spirit like Snow Charmer for himself. Although a spirit was no human, and there was no way she could warm his bed, he would feel happy every time she served him a drink or something. In addition, Snow Charmer was a great help to Hansen at this point. Zhu Ting did not want to let it go and insisted. How about I give up the S-Class St. Hall license and you trade her for Treading Cloud? No. Hansen turned him down without even thinking. He had lots of S-Class St. Hall licenses, well needed a spirit like Snow Charmer terribly. The broadsword in Zhen Guoxing's hand was still dripping blood. He looked to Hansen with a complex look, not sure what he was feeling. For 20 years, he had never been as relaxed as this moment. Young Manly's eyes were focused on Snow Charmer. She envied Hansen so much. The guy had very good luck as always. It was the first spirit shelter he conquered, and he already gained the fealty of the spirit. Uncle King was squinting. No one knew what he was thinking. However, his look was also quite complicated. Hansen and the rest took down the aristocrat spirit shelter. Is it true? Of course it's true. Someone had already been there. People of Goddess Gang had already stationed there and carved the words Goddess Gang on the gate. Damn it. 20 people took down the aristocrat shelter. That is so fake. How did they achieve that? No idea. However, there must be many people regretting to death. What do you mean? Regretting what? So many people used to be the members of Goddess Gang. In the end, when Hansen said they were going to conquer the spirit shelter, most people quit. Now that the spirit was taken down, each current member could have a room to themselves and live there for free forever. In addition, they were also given a large amount of meat. Do you think those who had left would regret? They must feel so bad. However, Hansen would still recruit people. Goddess Gang only had 20 people at this point, so that it must be hard for them to keep the entire shelter. They will definitely be recruiting. Hansen said that he will admit no one that had left already. It doesn't matter who talks to him. The way he's doing things, many people will be offended. He does not need to be afraid of offending anyone. People of Starry Group had to be respectful to him. He said he would conquer the spirit shelter, and he just did. With such a background and ability, he needs to fear no one. I'll bet all those who had left are regretting to death now. If they want to go to the shelter, they must pay a big protection fee. If they want a room, they must pay very high rent. All of the things they could have enjoyed for free. Meat of evil-blooded condor eaten. 1 sacred Geno point gained. After eating evil-blooded condor for days, Hansen eventually gained 1 sacred Geno point. However, it was so slow that Hansen simply threw the rest to the Archangel since he was no longer willing to eat the same thing. A huge benefit of having his own gang was that Hansen did not need to fight himself to gain different types of ordinary and primitive creatures. Hansen picked some smaller ordinary and primitive creatures to eat, gaining several ordinary or primitive Geno points every day, which gave him a much faster progress than the bird leg. I will first fill up my ordinary and primitive Geno points. The progress I make in my fitness is quite great. Hansen did not go out for adventures at the time being. He went to God's sanctuary to eat ordinary and primitive meat to gain some Geno points every day and read his books on Daphne the rest of the time. When Daphne finally arrived at the destination, Hansen had already gained 84 ordinary Geno points, 35 primitive Geno points, and 1 sacred Geno point. His basic fitness was already 80 plus. With all kinds of assistance, he could achieve 90 plus for a short amount of time. At this time, Daphne had already arrived at the Crystallizer Ruin. Initially, Hansen thought the so-called Crystallizer Ruin should be an ancient city or base. However, when he saw a real Crystallizer Ruin, he understood how naive he had been. Watching the gigantic planet that looked like a brilliant diamond, Hansen felt more shocked than he could describe. This planet, more than 10 times the size of planet Roka, was the Crystallizer Ruin they were going to explore. All kinds of crystallizer architectures were spread around on the planet. As Hansen was astonished by the glamour and grandeur of the Crystallizer Ruin, he suddenly sensed heat from his chest. Feeling shocked, Hansen quickly reached inside his clothes and grabbed the 9-life cat pendant. Suddenly, he felt like he had grabbed a boiled egg. The 9-life cat was giving off incredible heat. The closer he got to the Crystallizer Ruin, the hotter the pendant became. When Hansen entered the atmosphere of the planet, the pendant was almost scorching. After some preparation, the expert panel, Warframe Department, Explosion Department, and Marines took their equipment and left the warship, beginning their exploration. When the work began, everyone was banned from entering God's sanctuary again. Since the cookhouse did not need to go to the field, Hansen felt quite bored every day. However, since most people on the warship had already landed on the planet, he and Jai Yanran could see each other secretly quite often. Such a huge planet. We have only these people. How long would it take for us to finish the work if we look into one architecture after another? I don't think we could finish it in a century. Hansen felt quite upset when watching the field recordings in Jai Yanran's office. If this went on forever, he would probably stay here for his entire service. Jai Yanran smiled and said, "Who would be so dumb to discover one after another? That way, with these people, it would take us 500 to 1,000 years to finish 1% of the work." Jai Yanran paused and then continued, "Crystallizers had different ranks. Their architectures follow a certain rule. As long as we find one entrance, we could access their treasure. Since the device could not scan the internal structure of the architectures, we must rely on the experts specialized in crystallizer civilization to find the right entrance. Can't we just blast it away?" Hansen asked. The crystal material of their architectures is very unique. Not only is it tough, but it will also expand once blasted. At that time, the internal space would be completely blocked, which would make the excavation work even harder. Jai Yanran drank some water and continued, "This is not the real problem though. Since the experts and professors are here, the entrance could always be located sooner or later. However, if the crystallizer ruin is still working, that will truly be challenging." As Hansen was about to ask what kind of challenge there could be, he suddenly heard an explosion. Looking at the live recordings of the field, Hansen saw a red crystal the size of a fist floating next to a crystal wall. The crystal blinked with red light twice and something weird happened. The red crystal quickly expanded and changed its form, turning into the same vehicle as the multifunction excavator that was doing the fieldwork. It quickly rushed toward the original excavator. Bang bang. It only took 2 blows for the crystal excavator to smash the one it imitated. The crystal vehicle headed toward the excavation team. The soldiers in Warframe department quickly turned on their warframes and charged the crystal excavator. Because they did not want to damage the architectures, they refrained from using massive weapons, with only laser guns and swords in their hands. Luckily, the red crystal only imitated a multifunction excavator, so it was soon shot down into pieces, turning into a pool of red liquid that then evaporated. It seems that we are out of luck. This crystallizer ruin is still operating. I'm afraid this task would not be completed that easily, Jai Yanran said with a wry smile. What is that? Hansen was shocked. It is a defense crystal of crystallizers. The Alliance calls it a simulating crystal. Once scanned by it, it could imitate the shape of anything including mechanics and creatures. However, its texture will still be the same red crystal, so the simulation was not complete, explained Jai Yanran. What an amazing civilization, Hansen complimented. Very amazing and very dangerous. There are many deadly crystallizer technologies that we don't even know about. We found it. We found the entrance. A surprised voice suddenly came from the live recordings. Hansen and Jai Yanran quickly looked at the footage and saw Chen Shaoshan and several professors standing in front of an excavated architecture, looking inside, full of surprise. It seems everything is going smooth. I hope we could locate the treasure soon. Jai Yanran felt slightly relieved. However, in the next moment, the holographic image suddenly broke off. Jai Yanran quickly contacted Chen Shaoshan and the rest using Comlink. But there was no answer. Something's wrong. Jai Yanran suddenly became pale and summoned all the officers on the warship. The communications team was trying to reach people in the field. However, they were completely out of touch as if they had disappeared. There were not a lot of people stationing on Daphne to begin with, so even the cookhouse was summoned. Including the medical team, the repair team and the cookhouse, there were only less than 40 people. We must figure out what's happening first, Jai Yanran said with her brows knitted. Several top experts and scholars specialized in crystallizer civilization were in the field. If they were gone for no reasons, Jai Yanran would be facing harsh sanction if she returned without figuring out why. She might even be sent to the military court. In addition, many officers and soldiers including Chen Shaoshan were also on the planet, so Jai Yanran should not go back before taking a look. However, people who were staying on the warship were mostly non-combatants including officers in charge of ship operation, medicine, and cooking. There were very few people that could be deployed. Jai Yanran reviewed all the talents she got on hand and gritted her teeth. I asked for 5 soldiers who is good at warframe operation to follow me to the field, figuring out what is happening. I'm rather good at warframe. Let me follow you, Hansen said quickly. Naturally, he could not stay on the ship while letting Jai Yanran risk her life. In addition, he wanted to figure out why the nine-life cat pendant would react to the crystallizer ruin. The seven of them quickly left the warship and got on a field truck to go to the excavation site. Because it was not far from the warship, it only took them half an hour to get to the destination. Looking out of the field truck, all sorts of equipment were intact. Nothing was damaged, and there was no evidence of a fight. The only thing broken was the multifunction excavator. Seeing no blood, everyone felt relieved. At least those people were not under attack. Maintain the order. Transferring scanned data. Communications good. All sorts of information kept flashing on the warframes. Some sent from the truck, some from Daphne. Their warframes were also transmitting data back. Although everyone had been highly vigilant, nothing really happened. They reached the entrance the professors found with no trouble. It was a black crystal gate more than 100 feet tall, decorated with lots of complicated patterns. There were dots and circles and lines, as well as some triangular shapes. There were no obvious rules to how they were put together. It looked sort of like the guts of a mechanical clock. Quite mysterious. Captain, shall we go inside to take a look? Lilu asked Jai Yanran. Jai Yanran did not answer Lilu and felt astonished at the black gate. She quickly said to Hansen using a private channel, Hansen, I will take people down and have a look. You stay here. Why? Hansen knew she must have noticed something. Otherwise, she would not have said that. This is the ruin of some crystallizer royalties, and it's still running. It is too dangerous down there. Since you know nothing about crystallizers, you might trigger some dangerous traps. Just stay here, Jai Yanran said. I will follow you, Hansen said. This is an order, Jai Yanran said seriously. Your order is not valid on me, Hansen said softly. Jai Yanran was trying to say something else when she suddenly heard screams from the field truck. All of them quickly looked to the truck and saw the two soldiers stationing in the truck had gone out, rushing to them in warframes. What has happened? What has happened? Please report. Please report. Lilu tried to ask what had happened through the comlink but found all he could hear was noise of current. Hansen quickly checked his comlink and found his warframe had lost all communications to Daphne. The system was down. Behind the two soldiers, lots of fist-sized red crystal were floating in the air like red light bulbs. With a glance, one could not tell how many there were, but there were at least hundreds or 1,000 of them. Simulating crystal. How come there are so many? Everyone was shocked. No wonder the two soldiers started to run. Whoever saw so many simulating crystals would do the same. Previously, Hansen had already witnessed how powerful a simulating crystal was. As long as it scanned something, it could turn into the exact same thing. If hundreds or thousands of simulating crystals scanned the warframes or field trucks, they would be killed instantaneously facing all those vehicles. In addition, more simulating crystals were coming this way, growing in numbers. Jai Yanran had understood where the expert panel had gone, and she had to repeat their option. The closest simulating crystals had already caught up with the two soldiers. With a flash of red light, the crystals flashed at their warframes like a camera and quickly turned into red crystal warframes of the same style. They landed quickly and continued to chase the two soldiers. More and more simulating crystals became warframes and joined them. Lilu could not help drawing laser guns to attack the red crystal warframes to save his two comrades. No, it was too late for Jai Yanran to stop him. Lilu's shot made a huge hole in one of the red crystal warframes. However, instantaneously, all the red crystal warframes drew their laser guns and shot in their direction. Boom boom. The warframes of the two soldiers closest to the crystals exploded immediately, turning into burning crap iron. While the red crystal warframes were still shooting this way, retreat into the ruin. Hansen operated his warframe to go into the black crystal gate. Retreat to the ruin. Immediately, Jai Yanran followed Hansen and commanded in a clear voice. Lilu, whose eyes were bloodshot, gritted his teeth and ordered the other two soldiers to retreat into the ruin while covering them by going last. Boom. As Jai Yanran and Hansen just entered the black crystal gate, they heard a loud noise. The warframe of Lilu had already exploded. Seeing the warframe of Lilu was shot down, the two soldiers shot at the red crystal warframes madly using laser guns. Come inside. Quickly, Jai Yanran exclaimed at the two soldiers, but it was too late. Although the two soldiers shot down a few red crystal warframes, they were taken out by more simulating crystals. Go, Hansen exclaimed and used his warframe arm to push Jai Yanran's. Although those people were not his friends yet, Hansen felt upset seeing fellow humans die. Behind the black crystal gate, there was a crystal path. Jai Yanran led Hansen to go forward but did not dare to go too fast. The expert panel should have already entered the ruin. If there were any traps, they should have triggered those already. Being yelled at Hansen, Jai Yanran suddenly understood that and operated her warframe at full speed to go forward. After they ran for several miles, they entered a huge architecture like a shelter. Many paths were interconnected. Where are we going? Jai Yanran took a look, but paths looked identical to each other. She had no idea where they were supposed to go. In addition, the paths were so narrow that the warframes could not pass. Follow me. Hansen gritted his teeth, came out of the warframe, and turned it into a briefcase. He ran ahead with the warframe in his hand. Jai Yanran copied Hansen's moves and followed him. As Hansen just entered the path, he quickly summoned the snow-toothed wolf. A snow wolf suddenly appeared in front of Hansen. It was a beast soul mount, but Hansen did not need to ride on it, only commanding it to go forward. Hansen planned to use the snow-toothed wolf as a scout. He knew very little about crystallizer ruins. However, since Jai Yanran did not have any idea, he must make a decision, even if he did not know whether his decision was right or not. It sounds quiet now. Let's stop. When reaching something like a bridge, Hansen looked down and stopped, looking at the weird crystal statues. Jai Yanran listened carefully and indeed heard no sound. She felt relieved and looked to the crystal statues about 50 feet tall each. The statues were made of crystals of different colors. The shapes of them looked rather odd. They were nothing like humans or animals. Those are the deities that crystallizers worshipped. Most crystallizer ruins had statues like these, explained Jai Yanran as she looked around. Hansen did not seem to be listening but fixed his eyes on one statue. Come out, otherwise I would not be polite. Hansen squeezed the warframe case in his hand and yelled coldly at the statue. Jai Yanran looked to the statue, feeling puzzled. She did not see anything, but very soon, someone walked from behind the statue. Kang Zin, how are you here? Where is everyone else? Jai Yanran saw who it was and asked with her brows knitted. I don't know. We scattered. Why are you here as well? Kang Zin walked to the two of them as he said, stop. Otherwise I will shoot. Hansen quickly drew his mini laser gun from his waist, pointed it at Tang Zin and said coldly, why should I stop? Tang Zin did not pay Hansen any mind and continued to approach them. Boom! Without any hesitation, Hansen shot at Tang Zin's head, taking half of his skull away. Hansen, what did you do? Jai Yanran was startled, not sure why Hansen did it. However, Jai Yanran knew Hansen must have a reason. Although Tang Zin had offended Hansen before, Jai Yanran knew he was not someone who would commit murder because of a small grudge. Without Hansen explaining, she saw what was wrong. With half of his gold grown, Tang Zin did not fall immediately but turned around. On Tang Zin's back, a pink crystal the size of a duck egg was set in his muscles. Red crystal hair was growing from the crystal, driven into his entire back like veins, blinking red light as if he got new heart. It looked both weird and sickening. Parasite crystal. Jai Yanran was astonished, quickly drew her gun and aimed at the crystal like Hansen, ready to shot. Before Jai Yanran shot Tang Zin, a slim hair grew from the crystal and wrapped Tang Zin up entirely like a mummy. Boom boom boom. Jai Yanran and Hansen shot at the mummy like Tang Zin repeatedly, but to no avail. The laser guns only broke a part of the crystal hair, which quickly grew again. Laser weapons are useless. Use beast souls. They suddenly heard a voice say. Hansen and Jai Yanran turned back and saw Professor Lai Mingtang and several young researchers coming from a path nearby. It was Lai Mingtang who said that. Before Hansen summoned his beast souls, someone came from behind Lai Mingtang. He held a beast soul sword and slashed at Tang Zin and the crystal repeatedly, breaking the crystal. A cookhouse soldier does not belong here. Wang Hu took back his beast soul sword, stared at Hansen coldly and said, a cookhouse soldier is also soldier. Hansen said calmly, if you want to throw your life away, suit yourself, Wang Hu said contemptuously and ignored Hansen. He walked to Jai Yanran and said, Captain, why are you down here? You should not be here. Professor, what did you find? Jai Yanran ignored Wang Hu and asked Lai Mingtang. Lai Mingtang said, we found the entrance to the ruin and discovered that this is the ruin of crystallizer royalties. However, there were suddenly a huge number of stimulating crystals. Having lost the connection to Daphne, we had to retreat into the ruin. Later on, we were attacked by parasite crystals. Many people were affected. We wandered off in the mess. Where are Chen Xiaoshan and Lin Yifeng? Jai Yanran asked. Lai Mingtang shook his head and said, there were so many soldiers and researchers affected by parasite crystals. It was all a huge mess and I did not notice them. Jai Yanran frowned slightly. What Lai Mingtang said was similar to what she had expected to happen. People scattered in the ruin, so it would be hard for her to find everybody. Professor, do you know the way out? Jai Yanran looked at the surroundings and no longer knew the directions. This architecture of crystallizers looked like a metropolitan built with crystal. It was not easy to find a way out at all. All we need to do is to continue forward. Maybe we will find the treasure very soon, said Wang Hu. Lai Mingtang also said, Captain, since you are already here, and there are a lot of stimulating crystals outside, we could not leave anytime soon. It makes sense for us to take Wang Hu's advice and look around first. If we could locate the treasure, we would be able to finish the task and have some clues as to how we should leave this place. Having studied the crystallizer's civilization diligently, Jai Yanran knew what Lai Mingtang said was correct. However, it was the ruin of a crystallizer royalty. There were only several people without even a surpasser among them, so it was still quite dangerous for them to walk around. However, she did not have other options than to agree to their suggestions and go deeper. Of course, the researchers did not march blindly. Based on their understanding of crystallizer civilization, they could make judgments about which architecture was designed for what. Based on general rules of crystallizer civilization, they could calculate where the treasure was. Although the result was not exactly precise, they had the rough direction correct. Hansen, stay close to me. Do not go far, Jai Yanran told Hansen in a low voice. Wang Hu heard Jai Yanran and said to Hansen sarcastically, Captain, you took a cookhouse soldier down here. Are you trying to protect him, or should he protect you? Wang, please focus on your own job. This is not your concern, Jai Yanran said to Wang Hu coldly. Wang Hu snorted and said nothing. Lai Mingtang quickly tried to mediate. We are in danger now, so we should all work together to find the treasure. The more people we have, the more powerful we are. In addition, Hansen was also a graduate of a famous military academy. Shortly, another black crystal gate was standing in front of them, also decorated with those complicated patterns. Seeing the black crystal gate and the patterns, Lai Mingtang was overjoyed. He quickly walked to the gate and examined the patterns inch by inch. Fantastic. This place is indeed the ruin of a crystallizer king. Lai Mingtang watched for a while and turned back excitedly. Professor, what do the patterns mean? Although Jai Yanran had done her study, it was impossible for her to understand those patterns. Lai Mingtang explained in excitement, I could only figure out a small part of it. This crystallizer king came from Dia Galaxy. Dia Galaxy, the mother galaxy where crystallizers originated. Jai Yanran looked surprised. Indeed, it is the birthplace of crystallizer civilization, the Lost Galaxy. Lai Mingtang looked exhilarated. Hansen felt quite confused. He did not understand most part of it. All he knew was that the crystallizer king seemed to be of high rank and possessed lots of treasure. Other researchers also looked hyped, as if they had found a gold mine. Hansen did not understand anything about crystallizer civilization and Dia Galaxy. However, the 9-life cat dependent on his neck was getting hotter and hotter. It seemed that he was approaching something that was affecting it. Under Lai Mingtang's command, the researchers took out their tools and started to prise the black crystal gate. They were very skilled at it. It took them less than half an hour to prise it open. Light suddenly penetrated the gap. Ouch! A researcher that was shone upon by the light screamed and rolled around on the floor. The places on his body exposed to the light became scorched, from his face to his waist. The black mark went deep inside his flesh. Everyone became astonished. They quickly pulled the guy away from the light. Hansen was also dumbstruck. It only took a little while for the injured places on the researcher to be infected. Someone quickly took out the first aid kit to treat the wound, but it was useless. The researcher passed away very soon. However, Lai Mingtang stared at the light and said excitedly, This is the wandering light of crystals because there were a large number of crystals inside. This might be a historic discovery in the history of crystallizer research. Prepare fast. Whoever had succeeded in practicing microcrystal should follow me inside to look for the treasure. Other people stay here. Professor, you could not go inside. Jai Yanran stopped Lai Mingtang. Why not? Lai Mingtang was dazed. It is too dangerous inside. In addition, a huge discovery like this had to be made under the surveillance of AI according to Alliance laws, said Jai Yanran. Lai Mingtang quickly said, as long as one has succeeded in practicing microcrystal, one could resist the wandering light of crystal. The risk is minimum. Sorry, Professor, they must stick to the rules. The ruin is right here and will not go anywhere. When we go out and gain connections to Daphne, we will come back for it. Professor, I told you long ago that if we didn't get rid of this woman, she would ruin it all for us. Wang Hu and other researchers stood around Hansen and Jai Yanran with a murderous look on their faces. Wang Hu, you are also a soldier of the Alliance. Aren't you afraid of the sanction by military laws? Jai Yanran exclaimed at Wang Hu. Military laws? Wang Hu smiled contemptuously, summoned a golden beast soul sword and slashed at Hansen who was next to Jai Yanran. He snorted and said, there is no laws here. Hansen stayed calm and pulled Jai Yanran back. However, the two other researchers also summoned Beast's soul weapons and attacked them fiercely. But Beast's soul dagger appeared in Jai Yanren's hand, blocking the weapon of one researcher. Hansen turned his body sideways and dodged a blow from the other researcher. At the same time, he approached the researcher and put Curse Wolf dagger on his neck. Do not move, unless you want to see him killed. Before Hansen finished his sentence, Wang Hu threw himself at the researcher in front of Hansen and cut him in half. Without a stop, the golden sword continued to approach Hansen. Hansen's eyes became cold. He raised the cursed wolf dagger at the golden sword and quickly stepped back. He did not realize that Wang Hu was so cruel that he did not even care about life and death of one of his own, so Hansen was a bit slow. Crack. Unexpectedly, the cursed wolf dagger was cut off by the golden sword. A cut was made on Hansen's forehead. Although the cut was not that deep, blood started to flow. "You are dead," Wang Hu said coldly. His body generated incredible strength and caught up with Hansen like a shadow. Making another slash at Hansen, Wang Hu moved fast and fierce. Hansen was not affected by the situation. With anger in his eyes, he lamented the loss of the cursed wolf dagger. He had not suffered such a loss in a long time. "But it is not that easy for you to kill me," Hansen snorted, his heart thumping like thunder. Moving his legs, Hansen fiercely dodged the sword of Wang Hu and threw a punch at his face. Seeing Hansen fought Wang Hu with no disadvantage, everyone else was shocked. Wang Hu was an evolver whose fitness was over 100. For Hansen, a cookhouse soldier, to be his match, it was absolutely astonishing. "You indeed have some secrets," Wang Hu snorted and said. "Why are you standing there and watch? Kill Jai Yanren right away." The researchers then came back to themselves and attacked Jai Yanren. Although they did not dare to kill her as Wang Hu said, Jai Yanren was in danger and was about to be caught. Hansen obviously understood what Wang Hu was thinking. With Jai Yanren taken hostage, Wang Hu did not even need to fight Hansen anymore to beat him. "You're a good fighter. However, you are too naive." Hansen summoned the spirit stone. Shortly, an elegant beauty in ice armor appeared next to Jai Yanren, wielding her ice spear and fending off the researchers, saving Jai Yanren from the crisis. "Spirit, is that an aristocrat spirit?" The researchers looked surprised. Judging by the ability of this spirit, she was a top aristocrat spirit, which was so rare. With Snow Charmer helping Jai Yanren, the researchers could not approach them anytime soon. "Snow Charmer, take Yanren away." Hansen fought and transferred the Golden Growler and Desert Bird to Snow Charmer. Snow Charmer was a good rider to begin with. On the back of the Golden Growler, she wielded her ice spear and cleared a path among the researchers with the help of Desert Bird. However, before Snow Charmer pulled Jai Yanren on the Golden Growler, a figure suddenly appeared next to Jai Yanren with no warning. A mini laser gun was pointed to Jai Yanren's head. "Professor Limingtang." Jai Yanren looked to that person, shocked. Unexpectedly, it was Limingtang. Judging by his speed, Lai was even faster than Wang Hu. It was so hard to imagine that Limingtang, who was the weak and polite scholar, would have such fitness, even stronger than Wang Hu. "Wang Hu, stop," Limingtang said calmly. Wang Hu stared at Hansen coldly and went back to the side of Limingtang. Hansen did not chase him, staring at Limingtang without speaking. "Captain, I do not mean to kill you or become the enemy of the Jis. So, I will have to ask you to cooperate for a little while. When we find the treasure, I will let you go," said Limingtang. Then he looked to Hansen and said, "The same applies to you. Be our hostage and I will not kill you. When everything is over, you can leave together with her." Hansen did not reply but moved fast and dashed to the Black Crystal Gate. Not expecting Hansen to act this way, Limingtang and Wang Hu were slow in their reaction. Hansen had disappeared in the Black Crystal Gate. Damn it, that bastard had practiced microcrystal. Seeing Hansen was not hurt by the light when the expression changed. "Doesn't matter. There is only one way going into the core area." He could not go away. Limingtang did not mind it, looked at Jai Yanren, and asked other researchers to lock her up. "Zhang and Liu, you two have been rather successful in practicing microcrystal, so you should not fear the wandering light. Follow Wang Hu and me inside. The rest shall wait here. Shouldn't we kill her?" Wang Hu glanced at Jai Yanren. "It is troublesome to piss off the Jis. In addition, we don't know what is happening inside, so we should make the decision later. If we could not catch Hansen, with her as our hostage, we will have some leverage," Limingtang said calmly, taking his men to enter the Black Crystal Gate. Wang Hu and the other two researchers followed Limingtang, while the rest were watching Jai Yanren. After entering the Black Crystal Gate, Hansen felt his eyes were prickling. Although there was no sun, the light was so strong that it felt like there were a million magnesium lights. As the light hit his body, Hansen, who was already using microcrystals, still felt heat on his skin. The light is so strong here that I don't believe they could see anything clearly. Hansen thought and took out a small mirror. Looking at himself in the mirror, he summoned the Beetle Knight, which walked into the mirror and walked out as Hansen. Hansen hid behind the black crystal gate, controlling his doppelganger to run toward the other end of the tunnel. Shortly, Lai Mingtang and Wang Hu caught up with him. Seeing the doppelganger, they ran after it with no hesitation. Hansen hid behind the black crystal gate, controlling his doppelganger to run toward the other end of the tunnel. Shortly, Lai Mingtang and Wang Hu caught up with him. Seeing the doppelganger, they ran after it with no hesitation. You are all official researchers in the Alliance. Hadn't you thought about the consequences? Jai Yanran frowned at the researchers and said, Consequences? Captain, you are indeed so naive. Do you think we will stay in the Alliance after we succeed? A researcher sneered with contempt. For something inside the crystallizer ruin, you are willing to give up everything in the Alliance without knowing what it is? Jai Yanran asked. At the same time, Jai Yanran understood that these people had a plan since long ago. This was no improvised rebellion. Jai Yanran wanted to ask again, but the researchers stopped talking. One of them slapped some tape on her mouth. You used to be the almighty captain. Well, now you should tread carefully. Otherwise, we would not be polite with you. After he said it, he saw how helpless and beautiful Jai Yanran was, being locked up. Feeling tempted, he wanted to touch her face. Ouch! Momentarily, a figure flashed by, and the entire hand of the researcher was cut off and sent into the air. The researcher held his broken arm and screamed shrilly, It's you. The other researchers saw who it was and became astonished.